On a cloudy night, a blonde woman with blue eyes stares at the pitch-black sea on the deck of a sailing boat. She wonders if she can return and see Richard for one last time. As she clutches the ruby in her hand, the wind swirls. At that moment, Richard suddenly appears while floating in the air. As she stares at his angry red eyes, she wonders if she'll ever escape from this man who comes with the wind. Looking at his obsessive eyes, there's no running away from him, Missy. As Richard comes down, he pulls her towards him and asks her where she thinks she's going when she's carrying his child. The scene ends there as we go back to the present, which is 7 years ago. Presently, at the Rublin Duchy, Alyssa Rublin is called by the Duke. As she walks there, she thinks of how she's transmigrated into an R-rated fantasy novel. Previously, she was a 20-year-old girl named So-Yuna. After dying in an accident, she wakes up inside Alyssa's body, the villainous mother of the second male lead in the novel called Birdcage. In the novel, Alyssa is an orphan. Deprived and desperate for love, she was obsessed with her husband Richard, who ended up killing her. Fortunately, she still has more than 10 years left before the day she's supposed to die. Until then, as the current Alyssa, she'll make sure she changes her destiny and avoids dying. As she enters the office, she meets the current Duke of Rublin, Albert Rublin. He tells Alyssa to marry his grandson, which is the reason why he took her in. Alyssa wonders why he picked her when she's just an orphan from a Viscount family. So she concludes the Duke must have something he specifically needs from her. Oh, MC has great perception. As the Duke rambles on about women and giving birth, the butler comes in with a priest. He informs him that Richard is running late because he encountered a pack of thieves on his way down the mountain. The Duke knows Richard is just stalling his marriage, so he proceeds with it and orders Alyssa to sign the marriage certificate. Wait, how old is Alyssa? She looks so young. Alyssa signs after assuring herself that her ending will be different. As long as she doesn't give birth and obsess over Richard, everything will be okay. After that, Alyssa is escorted to a big, luxurious room. As she's about to fall asleep, she hears something creak and a boy with dark hair and red eyes appear. Finally, the husband appears. The boy sneers at Alyssa before he walks to the door. Finding it locked, he punches it in anger. By now, Alyssa guesses the kid is Richard. As the wind picks up inside the room, she realizes it's the power of Rublin. The power of Rublin is a hereditary wind control power passed down to the Rublin descendants. Just like Richard, their future son, Hannis, will also be born with that power. Richard gives up banging on the door and lies down on the sofa. Alyssa tries to introduce herself and their new marital status, but he ignores her, annoying Alyssa. I sense haters turn to lovers trope? The next day, Richard demands the Duke to cancel their marriage, but Duke Rublin refuses and asks him for his reasons. Ultimately, the Duke tells him to just stay with Alyssa until he comes of age. If they have children along the way, even better. After that, Richard can marry whoever he likes. Richard angrily unleashes his power, but the Duke isn't threatened. Instead, he warns Richard to uphold his duties as the successor of the Rublin household. It's only right he continues the family line. Richard argues how he never even wanted the title and how he's not interested in Alyssa at all. As it turns out, he's surprised to see Alyssa there. Uh-oh, haven't you heard the saying that a happy wife is a happy life? Alyssa ignores him and greets the Duke. After commenting on Richard's absence during breakfast, the Duke tells him they can get to know each other by sharing a room, but Richard refuses this and leaves. The Duke ignores him and gives Alyssa a book about the qualities of a good wife. Wow, what a decent human being. Starting tomorrow, he wants Alyssa to study the contents diligently with the tutor. As night comes, Alyssa is escorted to Richard's room again. Seeing him on the sofa, she remembers his unpleasant interaction with the Duke. The phrase, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," comes to her mind, and she decides to ally with him. She tries to greet him happily, but Richard silences her. Giving up, she walks towards the bed while Richard sneaks a look at her. After that day, Alyssa's classes begin. From manners to etiquette rules for a duchess, Alyssa has been busy learning how to become a good wife. Fortunately, she has free time after classes, so she usually spends it in the big library reading books. I envy their library so much. In general, Alyssa's been enjoying her day-to-day life, but one major problem is her relationship with Richard. To achieve her goal, she has to make Richard her ally and agree to divorce, but so far, Richard has been ignoring her. As Alyssa glares at him on the sofa, Richard tells her to just go to sleep. Alyssa tries to convince him to sleep in the bed, promising she'll only hold his hands and sleep. He sneers and asks if it was the Duke's idea to try and seduce him. As they bicker, Alyssa remembers about the 4 houses that contributed to the founding of the Arencia Empire. Rublin of the Storm, who controlled air, Kairat of the Red Flame, who controlled fire, Esther of the Forest, who controlled earth, and Serat of the Sea, who controlled water. After the empire was set, a discussion on who would be the emperor arose. House Kairat and House Rublin stepped forward. Ultimately, House Kairat sat on the throne. Emperor Kairat pledged to serve with loyalty, while House Rublin vowed to keep the imperial family in check. However, the oath and loyalty faded over time. House Kairat lusted after Rublin's power and tried to use marriage as an excuse to steal it. The more power, the greedier you become. Alyssa points out that their marriage was preventing the royal family from demanding he marry the princess. She relays her plan to stay married until she comes of age and how she'll leave the Rublin duchy after. Seeing her resolve, Richard accepts the offer. In the morning, Richard wakes up to find Alyssa snuggling him. As he gets up, he sees her trembling in the cold, so he covers her with a blanket. See? You are kind! Later, Alyssa also wakes up and goes to the sitting room. As she reads a book, she notices a young maid named Anne doing all the chores herself. She concludes the other maids must have bullied her to do all the work herself. Alyssa approaches Anne and asks her why she's mopping. Anne makes up a weak excuse, saying she wants to. Alyssa asks her why she's doing all the chores alone when there are other maids. Anne confesses that they had asked her before to cover for them, but she didn't do them well. So the head maid scolded them. Feeling guilty, she offered to do their work again. Alyssa is pissed. The maids were probably making up stories to guilt trip Anne. Determined, she tells Anne to take a break while she sorts this out. She's already such a girl boss. At the Duke's office, Alyssa manipulates the Duke to check the current situation of the maids. That same day, the maids who played hooky were fired. After that incident, Alyssa starts to demand things from the Duke. Most of the time, he catered to her requests, as long as it wasn't anything big. And now, she can even study finance. She's gonna use this to start a business and plan her life after a divorce. A woman with a plan, I see. Good. She enters the study room and sees Richard. She tells him she'll be studying alongside him in the future and help him lessen his workload. Ma'am, didn't you say you were going to leave? The teacher arrives, and after Alyssa introduces herself, the class starts. During their lesson, Alyssa struggles to use the abacus, and surprisingly, Richard helps her. She smiles brightly as she thanks him, making Richard dumbfounded. He even forgot to take his hand off from her. After seeing her getting the hang of it, Richard commends her internally. He believes she really might be able to help him in the future. Aren't you low-key accepting her as your future Duchess? Yeah. After class ends, Alyssa invites Richard to look around the territory with her. Without a second thought, Richard declines. Alyssa isn't offended and offers him cookies, but he still declines, saying cookies are for children. Insulted, Alyssa rebuts and leaves. After some time, Richard is seen reading near the windowsill. As he looks outside, he predicts it's going to rain soon. His mind wanders to the increasing number of monsters in the territory. Feeling uneasy, he decides to look for Alyssa. He reasons to himself that he's only doing this because the Duke will look for a replacement if she gets hurt. Instead of another girl who might have bad intentions, he'd rather have Alyssa. Liar! I know you're worried, Richard! Inside a carriage, Anne is worried that Alyssa is uncomfortable with the long-distance travel, but Alyssa tries to assure her she's fine and changes the topic to cookies. As her mind wanders to her future snack business, the carriage suddenly shakes. The knights outside shout that monsters are here. A guard approaches Alyssa and tells her not to step out until they get rid of the monsters. While the two hold hands as they crouch on the floor, Alyssa comforts Anne. Suddenly, the carriage flips, flinging Alyssa and Anne to the other side. A scorpion-like monster whacks the carriage window and sees them. Alyssa trembles in fear and wonders what happened to the people outside. Richard then arrives and uses his power to get rid of the monster. He's angry that a monster dare get near Alyssa's carriage. Okay, wait. Let's take a moment of silence as we witness the beginning of Richard's possessiveness. Alyssa then calls out to him, asking for his help to get them out of the carriage. Despite the horror she went through, Alyssa still smiles brilliantly at Richard as she thanks him. Seeing that, something inside touches his heart. The iceberg is finally melting. Alyssa and Richard dress up before they head out with the Duke to the palace. The Emperor wants to meet Alyssa to see if she's real and not a lie made up to prevent Richard from marrying into the imperial family. Well, it ain't a lie. It's the main reason they married. After 15 days of travel, they arrive at the Imperial hunting ground. As Alyssa steps out of the carriage, Richard assists her. She quickly notices that all eyes are on her. Soon, the Imperial family arrives with their distinct red hair. Everyone bows down to greet them. Noticing House Rublin, the Queen asks the Duke if Alyssa is the next Lady of Rublin, to which he confirms. Alyssa bows down and greets her, but the Queen sneers and proceeds to insult her through sugar-coated words. Please, your actions are too cheap for a queen. Back down. Despite the awkward air, the hunting festival continues. The prince instructs all the other children to follow him. We see the prince and his followers ganging up on a certain silver-haired boy named Ansel. The prince then instructs where everyone will sit and makes Alyssa sit next to the bullied Ansel. Alyssa now understands why Richard said they were garbage. Wanting to punch him but holding it in, Alyssa follows the prince's order. As she sits in her seat, Richard takes the one next to her. The confused prince tells Richard he should sit next to him, but Richard replies that it's only natural he sits next to his wife. Best hubby. After dismissing Richard as a fool for falling in love, he starts the meal by dumping juice on Ansel's head. The crown prince apologizes insincerely and starts mocking Ansel. Everyone follows and laughs at Ansel. Another despicable human. My gosh, to think that he's crown prince? Shame on you. Angry at their blatant bullying, Alyssa takes out a handkerchief and helps Ansel wipe off the juice on his face. The royal siblings get angry at her actions, so the prince tries to punish her the same way. But before he can pour the drink on her head, a windstorm happens and the drink coincidentally splashes his clothes instead. Take that, you vile cretins! Crown Prince Christian becomes more furious and blames Richard as the culprit. But a servant holds him back and tells him he needs to change first. Before he leaves, the prince promises he'll make Richard pay for this. As the royalties leave, Richard also walks out. Alyssa calls him, but Ansel stops her to say his thanks. She smiles and tells him it was nothing before she runs out to follow Richard. I hope Ansel isn't the second male lead. He's already too pitiful. He deserves happiness. Outside, Alyssa catches up to Richard and thanks him for helping her. He brushes it off, but Alyssa insists that she's still grateful that he took her side, so she thanks him again and calls him her dear husband. Richard turns and walks off, leaving Alyssa wondering if she upset him. But the truth is, he's blushing in embarrassment. So cute. Tsundere little male lead. In the next scene, Alyssa is trying to take out the stain on her dress with Anne beside her. At that moment, Alyssa hears people talking nearby. She pulls Anne beside her and they hide behind a bush. As these suspicious people talk, Alyssa pales in horror to learn the target is her husband. She then tries to find a way to ask the Imperial Guards for help, but decides against it. It's likely the Emperor made the order. The only ones who can help Richard now are the Rublin Knights. Alyssa and Anne then run out to save Richard. Dashing towards the Knights of House Rublin, they tell them that Richard is in danger, but they just laugh it off. She reminds them that they swore a blood oath to House Rublin before she goes to look for Richard. Even though she knows that in the original story, Richard survives because of his son, but she cannot shake off the doubt that the story may have changed since she's now here. A violent gust of wind comes, and she knows it's from Richard. She rushes while the knights follow behind her. Yes, go save your hubby! A group of men surrounds Richard, but he easily subdues them. Alyssa rushes over and sees that his stomach is bleeding. Richard then collapses on the ground. Thanks to this, the hunting festival is called off. Duke Rublin then asks to investigate, which the Emperor had no choice but to accept. Richard returns to the duchy and receives treatment, with Alyssa taking care of him. A trembling Anne comes and tells Alyssa that she saw the man who tried to kill Richard in the Duke's office. Wait, what? Alyssa is surprised that the Duke planned all of this just to show everyone how strong House Rublin is, at the expense of his grandson Richard. Trembling in anger, Alyssa tells Anne to keep this a secret. Richard later wakes up to see Alyssa taking care of him. She then tells him the shocking truth she learned, but he tells her that he already knows this, since this is not the first time it happened. Still, the Duke made him a successor after his dad died, so he plans to put an end to House Rublin. Alyssa now understands Richard and why he acts like so. She tells him he can count on her as she holds his hand. In another scene, Marquess Felice is having an audience with the Emperor about the recent incident. With the Emperor feeling threatened by Richard, the Marquess suggests to get rid of him. He suggests using the Oath of Brothers, the pact made by the 4 houses. If the 3 houses decide to rebel for a good cause, the Imperial family isn't allowed to wipe out their family. And if the Imperial household turns to them for help, The three houses must protect the imperial family no matter what. Marquess Felice says that with the oath, even though it might not directly kill him, it would still put him in a corner. In the meantime, Richard is teaching Alyssa how to calculate when a maid informs her that Count Ardan and Ansel are here to thank her. Richard is feeling annoyed that Alyssa has to get dressed up just to meet Ansel when she should be focusing on him. He even barges in on their meeting and pretends to be dizzy. Someone's feeling green. Oblivious to this, Alyssa excuses themselves. Before they leave, Ansel hands them an invitation to a party at their manor. Alyssa thanks Ansel while Richard grits his teeth in jealousy. Later in the evening, Richard tells Alyssa not to get close to Ansel, which she misunderstands as something else. Not wanting to explain himself, he tells her to just go to sleep. While Alyssa is deep asleep, Richard pokes her cheeks and tells her that if she's going to be by his side, she should give him her undivided attention. Eee! In the carriage, Alyssa thinks Richard is cute. He tagged along to the party with her after saying he wouldn't. He's such a tsundere. As they arrive at the Ardens' estate, Richard holds his hand out to Alyssa and tells her he'll be escorting her. Alyssa's surprised with Richard's recent behavior towards her, but she welcomes it happily. The three of them, yes, the Duke was there, enter the banquet hall with everyone's focus on them. Count Ardan quickly approaches to welcome them, making some nobles follow suit. With their attitudes doing a 180, Alyssa concludes they must have changed after knowing how powerful Richard is. This must have been Duke Rubelin's goal all along. After Count Ardan makes a toast to officially start the party, Alyssa and Richard are escorted to a different building for the younger people. As they enter, the others immediately show their hostilities, most of them the Crown Prince's lackeys. Ansel appears and greets him happily. Alyssa shoos him away since he's busy. She then drags Richard to the dessert table and shoves a cookie inside his mouth. They're starting to get familiar with each other. So sweet. As she eats, Alyssa feels pain in the back of her feet thanks to her new shoes. She decides to go out to the balcony to rest. Richard tries to ask where she's going and notices her limping. As Alyssa enjoys taking a break outside, she hears others talking about the Crown Prince and Richard's conflict. They even talk about Richard's illegitimacy and his rumored shady origins. As they laugh, Alyssa comes out to rubberman them, but they mock her for being married to a monster. Instead of getting mad, Alyssa answers them that she loves being married to Richard. Aww, perfect wifey over here. A silver-haired girl speaks up and tells Alyssa she's being cocky. Alyssa immediately recognizes her as the Crown Prince's fiancée, Rose Felice, the future stepmother of the male lead. They immediately use her status as fiancée to make Alyssa bow down, but she refutes them, saying it is Rose who should pay respect since she's still a Felice, while she, on the other hand, is already a Rubelin. OMG, that shut them up? As Alyssa walks away, she finds Richard looking for her. Seeing her trembling, Richard holds her hand and calls the petty kids vermins. As they walk out, Richard tells her she can just ignore them in the future. He's used to all their nonsense anyway. Alyssa gets mad and refuses to stay silent. Since she decided to be on his side, it's only right for her to defend him, and vice versa. Richard feels touched. It's the first time that someone stands up for him. Aw, you guys need each other. Crouching down, Richard tells Alyssa to get on his back. Alyssa hesitates at first, but does as she's told, wrapping her arms around his neck. Richard then walks with Alyssa on his back, both blushing after their talk. After the banquet, there is a brief peace that Alyssa certainly enjoys. She is on her way to the library when she happens to look out the window. What greets her is the view of various men training outside. And did I mention that most of them are shirtless? What a view. I don't blame Alyssa at all for her blatant staring. Her ogling is interrupted when Richard's voice comes from right beside her, making her jump. For a second, our lead forgot that she's married. He asks her what she is doing, and she quickly explains that she thinks that sword fighting is cool. He asks her if she wants to learn and offers to teach her, but she quickly makes her escape. She doesn't actually want to be forced to learn swordsmanship. Later on, a knight named Thompson is not having the time of his life. The little Duke has challenged him to a duel out of nowhere. Before they begin, Richard is staring at the window. When he catches a glimpse of Alyssa passing by, he quickly orders that they should start. Surprisingly, Richard is fast and quite skilled, disarming him in no time. He then looks up at the window again. Aww, he wants to impress his crush. How adorable is this little Duke? Later on, Alyssa is in their room looking at a map. Not long after, Richard enters their chambers. When she tells him that she saw him battling earlier, he is quickly flattered. But he is startled when Alyssa grabs him closer and reprimands him for doing such a thing when he is just recently injured. When he notices the map, Alyssa tells him that they should look at it together. He learns that she is looking for a place to settle after the divorce, and he is stunned. He is reminded of the promise they've made, and now he's regretting why he agreed to do that stupid thing. OMG, little Duke! Have you fallen already? You really shot yourself in the foot with that promise, didn't you? Alyssa tells him that she wants to live in Sornetti, and Richard is increasingly annoyed. That is near Arden's place. As expected, since the peace is brief, a decree from the Emperor comes. There is a war brewing against the kingdom of Paran, and it is customary for the Crown Prince to join the soldiers. However, since he is ill, Richard, the young Duke of Rublin, will go in his stead. Duke Albert is enraged by the Emperor's obvious machination. As for Alyssa, fears become increasingly evident in her face when she hears the news. She still recalls the way Richard almost died during the hunt. When she sees him, tears start flowing down her cheeks. She doesn't want him to die or even suffer any pain at all. She rushes to him and engulfs him in her embrace. When we think that Duke Albert can't get any nastier, well, he has proven us wrong. He wants Richard and Alyssa to make an heir before he has to go to war. How despicable is that? They're still babies, for God's sake. Richard straight up refuses, even declaring that he will turn down the position as heir when his grandfather threatens him. Albert is beyond angry, desperate to save his bloodline. But Richard vows that he won't die, and that Rublin will not fall in that way. Unbeknownst to the Duke, what he really means is that their line will be broken by his own hands. Ever vengeful, our Richard. However, in comes Alyssa. She assures the Duke that she will do as he commands. Richard is shocked by her decision. However, he doesn't have anything to worry about since Alyssa is a girl with a plan. They will sleep in the same bed, and the maids she recruited will check the bed the following morning. She then takes his hand and urges him that his first time should be with the one he truly loves. Later on, he debates if what he feels for her is love. However, one thing is certain, he never wants to lose her. Believe me, mister, that's love. The Emperor has ordered that Richard will go to war in a month. Richard has to spend every day in the forest to train against monsters as preparation. Alyssa finds herself upset that her husband is out early in the morning and comes back late at night. However, the knight he is training with has to remind him that there are many more important things than training, such as spending time with someone important. That is when he remembered Alyssa's request that he return early. She has been wanting to explore the North Annex with him. He quickly ends their session and rushes back to the mansion. When he reaches their room, he sees her sitting on the sofa, sleeping soundly and clearly waiting for him. She thinks that it is his birthday and wants to celebrate, but he denies that it is. Grayson had told her that it is, but Richard confesses that it is a random number since he doesn't know when he was born. He then tells her that tomorrow can be his birthday, and he will explore the mansion with her by then as well. She beams at him and tells him not to forget. The night before Richard's departure, Alyssa suddenly hugs him the moment he enters their bedroom. He is confused at first, but then he realizes that a pendant necklace is around his neck. She explains that it's supposed to protect him from bad luck. The young Duke's happiness is clearly painted on his face. She then tells him that they should sleep now since as his wife, she has to see him off early tomorrow. She really is determined to do her wifey duties. How adorable. She makes him promise that he will wake her up before he will leave, even using a pinky swear. However, the little Duke breaks his promise. Why would you do that, Richard? Before he leaves, he brushes her hair away from her sleeping face and murmurs to her not to get sick and not to hide her discomforts. He then kisses her forehead and bids her farewell, all while she is slumbering. As expected, she is enraged that he did such a thing. She vows to smack him once he gets home. Yes, show your husband who's boss, queen. However, despite her rage, she still hopes that he has a safe trip. Once Richard is no longer present in the mansion, Alyssa instantly notices the changes. The maids and even the Duke are now treating her coldly. They no longer listen to her. Good thing Anne remains by her side. When she returns to her room, she sees two maids stealing some of her necklaces. She even hears one of them speculate about the 15-year-old Richard's survival in the war. She predicts that once he's dead, Rublin will fall. Alyssa is fuming when she slams the door open, startling the thieving maids. She orders that the one who was speaking ill about Richard and the family be kicked out. Our little lady has fangs. Never speak of her husband like that again. After a month, Alyssa holds on to hope that Richard will prevail despite others believing otherwise. She knows how strong he is. And to prove her right, Anne comes barging into her room to announce that the little Duke has won his first battle. Duke, Albert, and Alyssa attend the Emperor's birthday party, and Alyssa has a determined look on her face. She recalls how suspicious it is that just a week after Richard's departure, the Crown Prince, who was ill, has recovered and is lively once again. How dare this guy attend a banquet when her husband is on the battlefield? She will take the cookie jar away from him for sure. It soon becomes noticeable how the noble's opinion of Richard has changed because of his victory. Prince Christian is not at all happy about that, especially since he is now being compared to him. Suddenly, he catches sight of Alyssa, so he smugly approaches her. When she greets him with a bright smile, he realizes just how pretty she is. She inquires about his health, and he explains that as a son, he should be present on his father's birthday. She then begins talking about false rumors that he pretended to be ill since he was afraid of the battlefield. The prince is outraged, but Alyssa tells him that she must have heard the rumors wrong. The prince then arrogantly declares that he will join the reinforcements this time. The moment he utters those words, Alyssa knows that he has fallen into her traps. Our little lady is quite devious. When it is their turn to greet the Emperor, Alyssa takes that moment to reveal that the prince has announced that he will go to war as well. The look on the Emperor's and his wife's face can only be described as utter shock. Due to the Crown Prince's arrogance, they have to send their son to the battlefield. Later on, Alyssa gets to have an aide named Agwil. With his help, she is able to send letters to Richard. The war with Paran is taking longer than expected, and it has been 7 years since it began. In the mountainous cold regions, a mature and grown Richard reads another letter from his wife with a smile on his face. He is interrupted when Sir Thompson informs him that a man has been sent by the Emperor. A grand feast is to be held there for them. When asked what other things he would like as compliments, he outright tells them that all he wants is to go home. Someone is clearly missing our little lady. I wonder who it is. Richard is not the only one who matured. Alyssa has been managing Rubelin's affairs ever since the Duke fell ill, and she is doing it like a boss. The people of their estate compliment how much her wisdom has helped them move forward. The meeting, however, is disrupted when a knight enters to announce that the war has been won, which means that Richard is returning. Pure joy instantly bloomed on Alyssa's face. The couple will be reunited at last. Later that night, she thinks that although his personality is still as blunt as ever, much of his appearance must have changed. She wonders how he looks now. Her musing is interrupted, however, when the wind picks up. Through the balcony, Richard steps in. And my God, he grew up into such a gorgeous man. It's like he's from heaven. She remarks that he arrived earlier than expected, and she takes his hand and leads him inside. The way he is looking at her is so knee-buckling that it should be illegal. She is about to sleep on the couch, but Richard says that he won't eat her. Mister, what are you saying? When they're settled down and Alyssa is fast asleep, Richard stares at her and marvels at how much he missed her. He is also very disappointed that she no longer hugs people when she sleeps. Meanwhile, the Emperor is talking to a marquis about Richard and Alyssa. He is particularly peeved that his plans are being ruined. The Marquis, with an evil smile, assures him that he already took care of it in advance. The following morning, Alyssa is confused as to why Richard is no longer with her when she wakes up. She thinks that last night was just a dream. Apparently, Richard is arriving with their knights. She goes outside to greet them, and she is taken aback that he looks like the one she dreamt about last night. When he greets her with a cheeky grin on his face, last night may not have been a dream. He has just arrived, but the sick Duke has already summoned him. As expected, the only thing the Duke wants to discuss is Richard making heirs. Give the man a break! When he all but orders that he sleep with Alyssa for a successor, he leaves him, not wanting to hear another word. Later on, Alyssa joins Richard and his knights at the table to celebrate. They're having a merry time filled with cheers and laughter. Thompson asks her to drink with them and say something, and despite Richard's annoyance, she gives him a speech about their heroism and gulps the beer in her hand. Everyone is amazed that she's good at drinking. Alyssa is having a great time, and she ends up drunkenly conversing with the knights. Richard eventually takes her drink from her and hauls her back to their room, much to the entertainment of their companions. He is tucking her into bed when she takes his hand and tells him that she wants to hold his hand. The problem is, Richard is not satisfied with just holding hands. What? Stop, Richard. You're making me feel giddy. The next morning, Alyssa suffers the consequence of drinking too much. She is instantly embarrassed by the way she behaved last night, especially in front of Richard. Speaking of her gorgeous husband, he is about to come into the room, so in her panic, Alyssa pretends to be asleep. When she peeks at him, she is flabbergasted that he just came out of the shower and is now changing clothes. Lucky! She gets to have that in her room. When he's done, he sits on the bed and asks her if she's done pretending. Busted! Her dutiful husband is now taking care of her, handing her a glass of water. When she asks if she did anything embarrassing, he feigns innocence and laughs at her, much to her everlasting shame. Later that day, she is still suffering from the hangover and she suddenly hears people outside. She looks at the balcony and sees her husband preparing to visit the territory. And just like all of us, she marvels at how handsome he is. Girl, that is so true. I mean, look at him. When he catches her ogling him, she instantly crouches down. She's so awkward. Later on, the Duke asks to see her. The result of that visit is unpleasant, to say the least. He wants her to seduce Richard or else he'll hurt the people she cares about. Ugh! How dare you! After all she's done for your territory, you do this? Ungrateful. She enters their room wearing a sheer nightgown, feeling horrible. She also recalls that based on the age of Hannis in the novel, he is to be conceived around this time as well. Richard arrives and sees the state she's in. The look in his eyes is so intense that she starts shivering, but she does not expect a blanket to fall on her shoulders. Richard tells her she'll get cold. He makes for the balcony, and before he flies away, he tells her not to mind the Duke's words. As she watches him leave, she decides that she must divorce him soon. Richard, for the past week, has been leaving every night, only returning once she is fast asleep. Alyssa confronts him to say that they can have separate rooms if her presence has made him uneasy. She explains that it is inconvenient to him, but he denies it. Unbeknownst to her, he wants to keep their arrangement because he can admire her while she sleeps and lay with her. Aw, Richard, tell her how you feel already. She instead asks why he's always going out. He replies that he's been going on walks. He is so awkward that what he said is clearly a lie. He is worried that he won't be able to control himself around her. Poor Richard resisting temptation. Well, you better be. Continue respecting your wifey. Alyssa enthusiastically asks if walking under the moonlight is different. So he asks if she wants to try it, and she eagerly agrees. When she is ready, she approaches him on the balcony. He carries her in his arms, telling her not to let go. Together, they fly in the air and marvel at the beauty of their surroundings. This scene is so cute. Having a flying boyfriend certainly has its perks. She thanks him with a bright smile, making Richard blush. The sick Duke is desperate to continue his line. Unfortunately for him, his time is indeed running out. While husband and wife are having a conversation, a knight informs them that the Duke is in critical condition. When Richard is alone with the dying Duke, he talks to him in his last moments. His anger culminates at that point, and he remarks that he should have lived longer so he could feel pain and desperation. He tells him how Rublin is now his and asks him to keep his eyes open in hell. The couple are working together in the office, and Anne observes how beautiful they are together. It is like they are born to be a couple. This is why she's confused about why Alyssa wants to have a divorce. Suddenly, she remembers a letter that was sent to him, so she hands it to him. It is a letter from Ansel. Alyssa reminds him that they used to help them before. However, he is not concerned about any of that. What he wants to know is why he is sending her a letter. The jealous husband is showing again. When the documents have been discussed and the others dismissed, she tells the Duke that she has something to tell him. He becomes even more attentive to what she has to say, and she falters. How is she going to say that she wants to have a divorce? The marriage is contractual, yes, but she has been living as a mistress for 8 years. However, she knows she has to do this. She wants Richard to be happy with the one he wants. He wants you, dear. Please, communicate. Before she can say anything, they are interrupted by Thompson, who informs them that monsters are in the West Forest and are attacking civilians. The Duke tells his wife that they will talk later when he returns. He has to deal with the attacks instantly. When he leaves, Alyssa is nervously left behind. Not long after that, she is interrupted once again. An avalanche on Mount Rook has buried 20 houses. Alyssa swiftly goes to her Duchess mode and orders what needs to be done in order to help, even announcing that she will go to the site herself. When she arrives, she witnesses the extent of the damage. A little child is there and crying, asking for someone to help her brother. Apparently, the boy went to the forest to gather firewood and he has yet to return. Alyssa knows that he is in the western forest where the monsters are currently attacking. She comforts the kid and asks for her name and her brother's as well. She hugs her as comfort and commends her bravery. She assures her that the knight will find her brother. However, she knows that they have to find the boy as soon as possible. They are able to help relocate the victims to much safer places. Alyssa instructs that enough relief supplies should be provided. She then asks Sir Lawrence if the child has been located, and she learns that they are able to find his footsteps leading into the western forest. Alyssa has decided to go with the knights to look for him. When they reach the forest, they instantly search high and low for the little boy. Agwal notices that it is not safe for the Duchess to stay any longer since it is about to start snowing hard. However, Alyssa needs to investigate something. All of a sudden, they hear a child's voice, so they follow the direction it's coming from. They have found the kid. She approaches the boy to comfort him when he suddenly screams. Dire wolves are lying in wait for an attack. Before she can move away, it jumps at her and all she can do is flinch. Surprisingly, something happens when her fingers accidentally graze the wolf. Rather than harming her, the dire wolf calms down for no reason and begins looking at her adorably. What? This is so unexpected! Is it possible that she has hidden abilities? Before she can think about it further, the wolf is driven away by a knight and the others have surrounded her to protect her from all the other wolves. She is soon back towards a cliff. Just when the situation seems to be hopeless, the wind picks up and with it comes Richard. Woohoo! Husband to the rescue! He summons lightning from the sky and electrocutes the wolves. Alyssa is so relieved that he arrives and she calls out to him. However, a horrified expression appears on his face. It is too late when she realizes that the cliff she is standing on has broken off. She is suddenly falling with nothing to hold on to. Richard, without any hesitation, launches himself after her, wrapping himself around her. Unfortunately, the fall is too fast and he cannot stop it. Duke and Duchess are plunged into the icy waters. The stream is too strong, making it harder for Richard to go to the surface. Seems like there's magic at work when the current changes its direction. Otherwise, they would have been in danger. Alyssa still hasn't regained her consciousness, so Richard has no choice but to perform CPR. Fortunately, Alyssa coughs water, but her temperature's dropping. Richard hopes that there's a village nearby. When Alyssa wakes up, the first thing she sees is Richard's chest. Confused as to why they're both hugging while being undressed? Richard is obliged to retell what has happened. Alyssa assures him that she's fine now. Well, she isn't fine at all. She doesn't know where to look. Well, my lady, isn't it obvious? Just look straight. Alyssa clarifies that she doesn't hate him. In fact, she likes it. I think she more than likes it though, cause we sure do. The way they are now, her locking eyes on his chest as she rests her head on his biceps. Oh, God. Can you see those biceps? They probably feel good to touch. Richard hasn't said anything, but the way he puts his arm on her body, it's giving "you can't move away from me" vibes. However, Our Lady can't handle the tension anymore, so she finds an excuse to get away from him. I understand you, girl. We can't handle the tension either. Instead, Richard offers her wine. It's a survival item to maintain temperature, so he always carries it around. Without hesitation, Alyssa drinks it like water. Oh, might be the start of something spicy. While sitting in front of the fireplace, Alyssa expresses her gratitude for saving her life. With a beaming smile, she also thanks him for returning safely. Richard is too stunned to speak, but when he recovers, he tells her to get some rest. But Alyssa doesn't want to, asking if he doesn't feel anything given their situation. Oh my God, stop, girl, you are wild. Realizing what she has said, she gets up, but oof, alcohol's kicking in someone's head. Luckily, Richard catches her with just one arm, bringing her closer to him as they take up the space between their faces inch by inch. His lips pressing onto hers only breaks away to breathe for air, but she wants a little more. Seems like the fireplace isn't enough to warm them up, and so they spend the night together, calling out each other's name in between. And we all know what they did. Alyssa's fast asleep, but Richard stays up, apologizing for spending their first night in a place like that. But it was nice when she urged him. He then kisses her forehead, hoping that she feels the same way. That morning, Alyssa wakes up first with a hangover, of course. However, she still remembers some memories as to what happened the night before. She's panicking out of embarrassment. Richard wakes up, all in good spirits, only to be broken by Alyssa's words. She apologizes for being too drunk and that it won't happen again. Ouch! Seems like someone's expecting more. Richard is about to cup her face, but the knights have come looking for them. However, Alyssa's still not feeling good, so she fell unconscious in his arms. That day, she dreams of her other self choking on her, saying that she has to get rid of the original plot or she'll end up dying like the original Alyssa. Meanwhile, Thompson goes inside Alyssa's room where Richard is, handing him a stone that they found inside the body of the monster who attacked them that day. The Devil's Soul Stone grows only inside the canyon of the northwest land of the Rubelan territory. If someone touches and absorbs it, it will slowly erode their souls and take their lives. For Richard, it only means one thing. Someone brought the Soul Stone from the tainted land and sprinkled it all over their territory. And so, Richard decides to investigate the canyon. There, soldiers already lost their minds. Richard pierced through their chests not to let them suffer any longer. As they go further inside, they find the Lake of Purification, which is said to contain the power of Aryan. It is said to block the evil energy of pollution. Suddenly, a monster in human form with a menacing aura slowly approaches them. Richard warns the monster, but it keeps on advancing. He has no choice but to take it down. Just then, it speaks. This monster has been waiting a long time for his desire, referring to Richard himself. After that, Richard thinks that this monster is somehow familiar. However, things only get worse. Richard suddenly feels pain, poking right in his chest. Oh no, our Rich! Back in the mansion, Alyssa is more anxious after that dream she had. She then starts asking herself if Richard will still treat her the same way. Being hurt by what she thinks is an unwanted relationship. She realizes that it's not different from the original. What if he hates her? Suddenly, the servant comes in, bringing bad news about Richard. She quickly stands and rushes to find him. The servant informs her that Richard fainted in the cave, but he is now safe and will soon reach the mansion. Outside, she hears people talking and sees Richard. She calls out his name only to walk right past her, coldly telling her that they'll just talk later. That small interaction makes her think that he must really hate her that much. Shortly after, in Richard's room, he takes off his shirt as his body's covered with dirt, saying that he almost got Alyssa's dress dirty. Also, he intended to hug her as soon as he saw her as usual, but he remembered what Thompson had told him. It would be better to temporarily avoid contacting others since the bad energy that clings to him would easily be transferred to weak people, like Alyssa for instance. No, how thoughtful of him. And so, he decides to keep his distance from her for a few days. Moreover, he is still bothered by that monster in the cave. Normally, he would have just let it go, but this time, he feels so insecure. Moments later, a broken badge has been found near the cave, and the back of it is engraved with Viscount Lox's picture. The Viscount Lox family is a famous one who's on the Emperor's side. To be specific, they are famous as Arryns who follow the order of Marquis Felice, the family-in-law of the Emperor. Simply put, they're now targeting Rubelan as a whole. He then decides to visit the Viscount together with Alyssa in 3 days. Meanwhile, Alyssa's spacing out in her room, overthinking about how Richard is treating her for days. Anne cheers her up, saying that she doesn't have to worry about Richard since he's a very strong person. Alyssa smiles and informs her that she will have a meal at the restaurant tomorrow. She then goes to the dining hall to eat, but the butler tells her about Richard's condition, so he won't be eating with her as of the moment. Alyssa understands, but still, it feels empty and sad. That night, she goes inside his office and talks about what happened between them last time. For her, it was just an accident, and since they're a married couple, it's not a big deal, so he shouldn't worry about it too much. No, Alyssa, no! That isn't the case here. You think you are assuring him, but no! He's now hurt. Apologize to our Rich now. Richard grits his teeth and coldly responds that she shouldn't be worrying about it. He then walks past her for the second time to open the door, asking her to leave since it's still dangerous to get closer to him. When she takes her leave, he closes the door and sits on the floor holding his head, badly hurt about what she said. I feel bad for him. What's the point of saying that she doesn't mean it only to hurt herself? And not only that, he's now doubting everything they did together. When will she love him? Since that day, they haven't had time to meet and talk. They even ride in different carriages. Anne notices that she looks rather pale, but Alyssa just assures her that she's fine. On their way to the capital, Alyssa can't help but to feel like she'll never come back to the continent. It's just, she really has to leave. Fast forward, it's been half a month since she started to come to the capital, but during that time, she's having carriage sickness and fever. Richard orders the knights to rest for a while to give Alyssa some time to relax. Since the toxic energy is now gone, he decides to visit Alyssa in the tent. Finally. Anne then goes inside, bringing some food. However, Alyssa feels rather disgusted than hungry, so she runs away from the tent. Richard follows her, worried about how she also hasn't eaten anything these past few days. Alyssa just assures him that she'll see a doctor when they arrive in Akaroya, but for now, she wants to take a rest, leaving him behind without even looking at him. Alyssa realizes that her period hasn't come yet this month. Could it be that she's pregnant? Oh, we'd love to have a mini Rich or mini Alyssa. But Richard always wants to end his family line, so she's thinking that he won't want or even like the child. On the contrary, maybe she'll have to accept his resentment and hate because in the original novel, he hates the unwanted child and plans to get rid of it. Alyssa doesn't want that. In the capital, Richard calls the doctor, but Alyssa keeps finding an excuse not to be examined. Richard even offers to stay by her side so she doesn't have to worry. This is the least she expects. Richard will know the truth. Suddenly, Thompson has a very urgent matter that needs Richard's presence. This time, Alyssa immediately dismisses the doctor and asks Anne to find a talkless one who lives somewhere outside the capital. Indeed, she's pregnant. This is not how she expected things to turn out. Anne asks that compared to divorce, wouldn't it be better to live with her husband? Alyssa then tells her that Richard doesn't want their baby. To be exact, he hates children a lot. A person who hates children but slept with Alyssa without any preparations? Anne thought it was wrong to think of him as someone deserving of Alyssa. How could she be so happy to live with that irresponsible man, right? Calm down, Anne. Those are groundless claims. We should be neutral here. I'm actually Team Richard. Back in the mansion, Alyssa recalls what happened to the original story. Hannis is a child who has never received love from anyone. His mother, Alyssa, only nags for her husband's love and never cares about him. His father, Richard, always hated him since he was still in his mother's womb. A child who grew up unloved becomes a supporting character with a twisted mind. He kidnaps and imprisons the female lead and begs for love like his mother. Alyssa, in the present, doesn't want that to happen. In a short time, she will definitely not divorce Richard and live together as colleagues and run away from his territory before hearing Richard saying that he will have no baby. How can you assume things will just turn out like that, Alyssa? And so she promises to her child that she will definitely give him a happy life. A few days later, while reading a book related to family power, a letter arrived from Count Ardennes. In the letter, the repair of the villa ended last week, assuring her that things will happen the way she wants them to. Glad to receive good news. She has to prepare quickly. However, Richard goes inside after calling her many times, but then he notices the letter in her hands. Richard asks about the letter, but Alyssa ignores his question. Instead, she tells him to take a bath before they can have a meal together. When Richard stands up to wash himself, he notices the family crest on the letter. He definitely knows who it comes from. You can't hide the truth for long, Alyssa. The next day, Richard visits the Emperor and reports that he discovered traces of someone who led monsters into the Demon Soul Stone. He is disgusted by the fact that the Emperor still behaves indifferently, even though Richard has come closer to the truth. Richard emphasizes that it is a very strong threat, almost murder. Whoever did it must be afraid and jealous of Rubelin. If he finds out the person behind it, he will use the name of Rubelin to punish him. After that, Richard leaves the throne room while the Emperor clenches his fist out of fear and agitation. Suddenly, Richard feels pain on his shoulder, but he just ignores it, thinking it's not a big deal. That night, when he comes home late, Alyssa waits on his doorstep. He tells her to just talk tomorrow since it's already late, but Alyssa insists on talking about it now. Without hesitation, she tells him to get a divorce. No, Alyssa, please don't do this to our Richard. Richard looks surprised, so Alyssa reminds him of their promise 8 years ago. Richard seems to be losing his cool, and he starts to question if it is because of Ansel Arden gripping both of her arms. Alyssa denies his accusation as he looks away, gritting his teeth out of anger. He claims that he doesn't remember that they made a promise, but deep inside, it was him who fantasized himself. He realizes that after that day, She stayed without saying anything. However, he still doesn't want a divorce. No, never. He holds her head with both of his hands while looking straight into her eyes, angrily declaring that she is his wife, the mistress of Rubilin, now and forever. Okay, just cave in, Alyssa, cause we definitely are. As he closes the door, Alyssa trembles in fear, crying while Richard reacts angrily when she's only making a decision that makes everyone happy. Based on what has happened last night, Alyssa thinks that nothing's impossible, so she decides to talk to him one more time. But Richard goes in the room and asks to go outside to get some fresh air, scratching the back of his head. This shy side of him is top tier. He looks so cute and, well, less like a villain. When he comes back to fetch her, he's mesmerized by how beautiful and elegant she looks. But well, it goes both ways. She's also staring at him as if she's looking at an art. They're a perfect couple, y'all. In the carriage, Richard doesn't say anything and just looks outside. Richard is so different from the original. He accepts her as both a family member and a friend. No matter how uncomfortable he feels, if she's tired or in pain, he always gets worried. He even refused to divorce. The possibility that it is due to the relationship between them being different from the original is very high. Yes, Alyssa, that's exactly the point why you shouldn't leave him. The future is not divorce, but a family. She suddenly fell asleep after thinking about it too hard. Richard notices it and lets her rest on his shoulder. However, in his mind, he keeps asking why she always intends to leave him. They've lived apart for 7 years, and it's not long since they've lived together. But she only remembers the promise from 8 years ago and always wants to leave him. But now, he can't live without her, hoping that she'll always be by his side. Now this is what we're talking about, Alyssa. Surrounded by sakura trees blooming beautifully, Alyssa now feels a lot better. A lot of families also visit the place to have a picnic. Seeing a child on his father's back, Alyssa asks Richard if he ever thinks of having a child. No need to ask, it's already in her. Because of Albert, Richard doesn't want children, but he doesn't hate them at all. He hears that pregnancy and childbirth are a very tiring process for women. Looking at Alyssa's small and weak body, he can't just let her give birth and endure a painful process. If Alyssa doesn't want a child, it's still fine. So he tells her that he has never wanted a child. Really, we don't know who to poke here. They both misunderstand each other all the time. However, he's about to say something, but he's cut off when Thompson stops a kid from greeting Alyssa. Alyssa just waves at the kid as Richard asks her to go back into the carriage. Alyssa confirms that he doesn't want it. She knows that he has to leave. Confirm what, Alyssa? We're so close to smacking you both on the head. Alyssa isn't selfish to her own hopes. She completely understands what Richard has been through growing up, so it's quite understandable on his part. And if she can't get a divorce, then she'll just run away. Anne brings the pregnancy medicine at hand. Suddenly, Richard approaches from behind and asks Anne to leave. He then holds her hand and asks her what her illness is, seeing the medicine Anne handed over. Alyssa lies about it, but then he grabs her waist and hugs her tightly, asking if she's dying somewhere alone. This is so funny. Kidding, we're in a very serious situation here. He clearly doesn't want to let go of her. He's now crying, saying that if she wants to die, then at least she can die in his arms. I can't really stop from laughing. He looks like he's about to rip his heart open, but his wife's just pregnant and she doesn't want him to know because of a simple misunderstanding. LOL. Back to the story, Alyssa now looks at him and wipes his tears, feeling weak at the sight of him breaking down. If he keeps doing that, then she'll hold out hope like a fool. And so, she assures him that she's just having stomach aches. Because of that, Richard takes care of her for a few days. At this rate, it's only a matter of time before she gets caught. On the bed, she touches his face and hugs him as they sleep. She just wants him to be happy, begging for him to understand her. She has no choice. Yes, you do. Just tell him the truth. That morning, Richard leaves for work. Alyssa then hugs him tightly. This time, she's able to say goodbye. Alyssa and Anne manage to escape the mansion through the underground paths without being noticed. As soon as they arrive in Ardan Center, she approaches a worker and asks to retrieve all her belongings. Inside, the manager serves them a little snack as she prepares the things that Alyssa needs. Apart from that, everything is taken care of. Suddenly, Alyssa's stomach hurts at the smell of food. Shortly after, she collapses. Anne asks her to stay for a while and rest, but Richard will surely find them soon. The manager then offers to help them. In the woods, Viscount Rojas runs to escape, but Richard is just waiting for him up in the tree, asking where he's going so early in the morning. Richard saves him a lot of trouble for talking nonsense that will only upset him. He then knocks the Viscount down. The Viscount promises to tell him everything in exchange to spare his life. However, there are also attackers behind them, but it's not targeting Richard, but the Viscount. Suddenly, he feels pain on his shoulder, and the next thing he knows, he has already killed the attackers with black magic. Just then, Thompson comes and informs him that Alyssa's gone. Since it's time for morning worship, Pope Aiden Serat's presence is needed. A little trivia about the Serat family is that it is a family that has been pope for many generations. The one with the greatest power will become the pope and devote himself to the people, and they will build shrines to help poor and sick people. In addition, the Empire already knows about the growing strength of the Serat family, but the commoners always believe in them. Not long after, Pope Aiden quickly ends the morning worship and calls on the Knight Captain. I wonder what might be going on. On the other hand, Lady Alyssa wakes up in a very good mood after having a very high fever the other day. She is currently staying at a small villa with the supervision of Dr. Sattel to keep her and her child safe. After a short while, a madam comes to see Alyssa to ask for a favor since her daughter is sick and she needs a doctor. Their family doctor was sent to aid the nearby town since it is experiencing an outbreak of plague. Now that their daughter is sick, they need a doctor to come check on her. Alyssa thinks that it is dangerous to bring a child to a village full of plagues, thus, she immediately calls her doctor to help them. Now that her daughter is safe, the madam is extremely grateful for Alyssa. Come to think of it, they have not introduced each other properly yet. The madam introduces herself as the Emperor's sibling, Olivia Beltane. Meanwhile, since Alyssa is running away, she fakes her identity and introduces herself as Alyssa Thearte. Alyssa assumes that Olivia must have married the Marquise. She then asks more questions about Princess Beltane and the other way around. Alyssa tells her that she got a divorce recently, which is why she's alone. Afterward, Princess Olivia takes off her necklace and gives it to Alyssa. A very long time ago, Olivia had a close friend, Ulia, who often came to her when she was pregnant. At that time, she was not in the right state of mind, so she behaved badly without knowing that it was the last time seeing her. She will forever regret that she turned her dearest friend away. That is actually so heartbreaking. As Olivia gives the necklace, she says that meeting Alyssa makes her miss her best friend. She tells Alyssa to visit Beltane if she ever needs help. Richard is reasonably frustrated, and it shows. A dark aura follows him around, because if they were not able to track the coachman that picked up the Duchess, someone would have surely lost their life. After finding out Alyssa's whereabouts, Richard's knight warns him to admit he is wrong, even if he didn't do anything. Indeed, take note, Richard, she is always right. A motto that most respectable gentlemen follow to ensure a happy marriage. Not long after, they reach the location quickly where Alyssa's driver dropped her off. Richard immediately demands to meet with the manager in order to find her right away, causing the attendant to scurry away and do as he says out of fear. However, the manager is not familiar with a blonde-haired woman named Alyssa. Richard asks to take a look around the place and find her by himself. After turning the place upside down in their search, they were unable to find her. Instead, all he discovers is a farewell letter that Alyssa wrote. There is also another letter sent 2 days ago with her signature. Meanwhile, Alyssa's maid Anne is wondering why Richard hasn't come yet after sending the letter informing her where they are currently staying. They will be transferring to a new place by boat soon, so he needs to catch them before she can run away again. She was the one who sent the second letter indeed. Well, I can't really blame her because her mistress was in a delicate condition. Luckily, everything is going according to plan because the branch manager allows Alyssa and her maid to ride the boat instead of the carriage, so they are able to run away faster. Before finally leaving, she wants to take a rest for a bit in another room since she's kind of tired. However, no matter how tired she is, Alyssa is unable to sleep immediately because she feels uncomfortable. In that case, she decides to go to the sun deck to get some air. Her mind wanders off back to the life she left behind. She actually hopes to see Richard again someday, even if it's for the last time. Even if they have been together for less than a year, the image of him is still clear in her head. Alyssa, make up your mind! Your husband is going crazy looking for you as we speak. At that moment, she feels the wind around her pick up abruptly. A familiar occurrence that only happens when a certain someone uses his powers. Richard suddenly appears from the sky as a strong wind comes. Just when Alyssa thinks that her plan is going her way, Richard catches her in the end. He is confident that he can find her no matter what. As he cups her face, he asks her where she wants to go with his child. Richard then warns Alyssa that she cannot go anywhere, no matter where she runs, since she is carrying his child now. Shortly, he apologizes and asks to talk first. Before having their talk, Alyssa goes back to her room first with Richard. He leaves her alone with a maid for a while. As soon as she sits on the bed, Anne apologizes immediately. She admits that she sent a letter to him, revealing Alyssa's whereabouts because she was afraid something bad would happen to her. And that time when she was sick, she was calling out Richard's name. Being the understanding person that she is, Alyssa understands that it was the best choice Anne could make at that time. However, she makes it clear that next time, things need to be discussed with her first. Even though the plan did not go well, Alyssa feels somehow relieved, which is strange. When Richard showed up earlier, she was surprised but also happy at the same time because she really misses him. The truth is, Alyssa is actually afraid that Richard will kill the child, which is why she is running away. Not long after, Richard comes back into the room. Now that they are alone, he asks why Alyssa is keeping her pregnancy from him. She explains that it seems like he does not want the child because she overheard his conversation with Aaron back then. So, everything is just a misunderstanding? Guys, I'm no marriage expert, but communication is the key. Her plan is to bring the child to a place no one knows and raise it well. After hearing that, Richard hugs her and apologizes, saying that he does not hate the child at all. He doesn't like Alyssa running away from him. That's why he regrets not caring for her more. If that is the case, then they can live happily together. She then cries harder into his arms as they clear things out. Later that night, they decide to go back to their home. As soon as they are back home, Alyssa apologizes to everyone for causing them to worry about her. During dinner, she suddenly pukes, as she still feels uncomfortable after taking the pregnancy pill. Witnessing her suffering makes Richard feel more guilty. All you can do, dear Richard, is to make it up to her. Shortly, Anne takes Alyssa to her room. Meanwhile, Richard's knight advises him to become his wife's power and say some words of affirmation to her for being a mother. Richard gets more advice on how to become a better husband and father. Even if he's not used to those types of things, he is willing to do anything for Alyssa. Yes, as he should! You got this, Richard! Later that night, Alyssa is about to go to bed when she finds flower petals on the floor and the whole room is filled with romantic vibes. Suddenly, Richard shows up with a bouquet of flowers and congratulates her on becoming a mother. Although he is still unfamiliar, he will work hard to become a good father. Oh, that's so sweet, OMG! Besides, it is good for the baby to sleep with the parent, so from now on, he suggests that they should sleep together. Alyssa then lets him touch her belly later on. No, Richard, you could have just said that you wanted to be close to your wifey. Even if he can't feel anything since the child is still very small, he talks to her belly with a lot of love for their baby. The next morning, Alyssa wakes up and finds herself cuddling with Richard, which shocks her. Momentarily, he wakes up and feels that she is having a fever, so he panics and immediately notifies Anne to call a doctor. She assures him that a light fever is completely normal and there is nothing to worry about since everyone experiences it during the early stages of pregnancy. Alyssa feels kind of weird now that Richard is sweeter and more caring to her. She feels like she's really Richard's family now. Later on, while eating breakfast, Richard suddenly puked after taking the first bite of his food. After getting checked by a doctor, it turns out that Richard is having a sympathetic pregnancy. They are trying to figure out what could be the possible cause of this, but they couldn't come up with a proper solution. I'm sorry, but it's kind of funny that it's like Richard is pregnant too. Moments later, Richard decides to follow Alyssa to a restaurant. They are now talking about the matter with Viscount Lohas. The agenda for the day will be the last interrogation, and if there is no special news, he will release him. He is still quite aggressive and violent in some ways. However, Alyssa tries to tame him to calm him down. Her plan is to drag Viscount Lohas to their side instead of killing him, since they will benefit from him in the future. Somehow it is working because in the end he agrees with her alternative plan, which doesn't involve violence. Meanwhile, Pope Aiden's ordered investigation hasn't made any progress yet. As he's in the garden, deep in his thoughts, Olivia comes and interrupts him. They then proceed to catch up over a cup of tea. Flashback to when they were young, Pope Aiden, Olivia, and Ulia used to be close friends. Ulia, despite being a commoner orphan, has always loved and cared for others. As time flew by, Aiden and Ulia fell in love and got married. OMG, what a revelation! However, a terrible accident took place which caused trauma to everyone. 20 years ago, the royal family started to control the Serat family. Conflicts began to occur frequently, and at that time, there was a problem in the canyon. As Aiden tries to prevent things from worsening, he gets attacked, which causes him to lose consciousness. In the process, Ulia was implicated in treason and ran away so that she wouldn't die. After Aiden miraculously woke up, everything was completely messed up. Desperately, Aiden searched for his wife. Eventually, Ulia came back after being missing for a while. However, she returned as a cold corpse. No way! I can't imagine the pain. Poor Aiden. Presently, Pope Aiden disregards his thoughts about the past and asks Olivia who she will be praying for. She explains that she comes to pray for her family. Not only that, she will pray for her new friend, Alyssa. Ansel is waiting for Alyssa to arrive in the manor he had prepared for her. However, there's no sign of her presence yet. While waiting, he encounters a man who turns out to be the resident doctor of the area. When Ansel reveals that the person moving into the manor is the only daughter of Viscount Lohengrin, the man is mortified. He told Ansel that Lady Alyssa died of lung diseases 8 years ago. What? Meanwhile, Alyssa is worried since she can't meet Ansel at the moment. Richard catches her deep in her thoughts, but she just shrugs it off. Momentarily, Richard gets a letter, a hunt invitation from the Imperial Palace. Alyssa wishes to join, but he doesn't let her because of her condition. Her stubbornness can't stop her since she is persistent enough to join the hunt. After all, the Emperor controlling Rubelin is aiming at their baby. She does not have any intention to leave things alone. Alyssa wants to show them all how Rubelin has developed over the past 8 years. If that is the case, then Richard agrees with her and starts preparing for the hunt. I love how Richard always follows what Alyssa wants. Later that day, Richard and Alyssa decide to go shopping for clothes in the capital, which makes her really happy. Since this hunting festival is the first official event that he will be attending after returning from the war, Alyssa thinks that he should be dressed to look like the main character of that expectation. She lets him try to wear the clothes she bought earlier to the hunting festival. Shortly, he takes off his clothes, which shocks her, even though they are alone in their own bedroom and they're basically married. She notices that his back is full of injuries and scars, which make her worry. Now that Richard is already a father, he needs to take care of himself more. If anything happens, he does not have to suffer alone since Alyssa is there for him. The next day, the hunting festival begins. When the chariot of Duke Rubelin's family arrives, everyone's attention is on them in an instant. Everyone is appalled with a hint of jealousy at how the Duke and the Duchess are dressed so perfectly. As they are walking together, Alyssa hears a familiar voice calling out her name. Alyssa and Olivia Beltane meet each other at the hunting festival unexpectedly. She feels quite guilty for faking her identity now that they have met each other once again. She tells Marchioness Beltane that she will explain everything later. As the event starts, Richard keeps checking on Alyssa in case she feels unwell again. He tells her to come back to the carriage and rest if she feels tired, even a little bit. Aw, look at him being such a great husband. After seeing that Alyssa's husband is the Duke, Olivia explains how she almost introduced her son to her, wanting Alyssa to be her future daughter-in-law since she thought that the two of them got divorced. Richard gets quite upset and jealous after hearing that. Momentarily, the hunt begins, and Alyssa wishes Richard luck. Now that she and Olivia are left alone, she apologizes for lying about her identity, explaining that she couldn't reveal her real identity because she left her home at that time. The ladies are quick to get settled again. They catch up for a bit and talk about what happened between Alyssa and Richard before. In the end, Olivia is glad that the two of them made peace. In the hunt, there is a palpable tension between the Crown Prince and Richard. The prince is an arrogant guy who is a coward for leaving the battlefield sooner than everyone else. He sees Richard as his competition, and he keeps competing with him. However, Richard does not even care about him at all. That guy is so annoying. Richard is far superior than a spoiled brat like you, Prince Christian. As Richard tries to walk away, Lord Rubelin appears and approaches him out of the blue, in the middle of the forest. After putting all his people in danger, he is still mad at him and does not like him even a little. However, Lord Rubelin says that he only did that all for him, so he should not take it so hard. He keeps saying nonsense things, so Richard threatens him to rip his mouth out if he does not stop. Before he gets angry and loses control, Richard walks away from him immediately. The ladies are gathered together at the fine dining table. The Empress expresses gratitude for everyone's presence despite being so busy, thus she offers them a tea that she especially prepared for the ladies. The tea is made from dried tetra flowers, which are very rare, so it's hard to buy. Alyssa thinks that she's just flaunting that she can drink the kind of tea that no one else can buy. She is having second thoughts about whether to drink it or not since she might get morning sickness after drinking. In the end, she still drinks it since she is still hiding her pregnancy and now is not the time to announce it. Anyway, the reason behind attending the festival is to show everyone that Rubelin is still strong. Because of the rift between the Imperial Palace and the temple, She also thinks that dragging the temple to her side is beneficial. Momentarily, she purposely spills her tea, which stains her dress. Anne immediately comes near her to wipe the stain. The other ladies notice how even her maids are dressed well. That reaction is exactly what she expects. To get on people's good side, she explains how she always wants to reward the people who worked hard for her. Moreover, a little compensation is enough for people to improve their working sense. Since the main characters of the festival are the royal people, the spotlight will always be on them, no matter how much makeup she puts on. As an alternative plan, she focuses on taking better care of her maids and knights. If this thing is spread word for word, many talented people will come because everyone wants to work in a place where they are treated well. That is Alyssa's way to show her wealth. Gosh, she is so brilliant! Moreover, she continues with her plan by mentioning an ore deposit containing luminescent stones just recently. The royal ladies are in awe since the scale of the mine is huge. Alyssa shares that she intends to expand another business with luminescent stones. She is planning to take this opportunity to find another family to cooperate with. However, the conversation is cut off by the Empress since she wants to talk about topics that everyone can relate to. Moving on, the Crown Princess presents brownies made by their chef for everyone. As soon as Alyssa smells butter in the brownies, she suddenly feels like puking. She tries to prevent herself from vomiting or else she will be criticized. However, she can't help it anymore, so she excuses herself. Luckily, Richard appears out of the blue just in time and rescues her. He explains that Alyssa's health is not good these days, so it's not good for her to eat something strange. Richard is literally her knight in shining armor. Richard carries Alyssa and tries to get her away from the ladies before anything bad happens. He brings her by the lake for a while and gives her some candy to make her feel better. Now that Alyssa feels quite better, she is wondering why he's not hunting and if he is going somewhere else. Their conversation is cut off when the gentlemen arrive. The prince makes fun of Richard for being around his wife like an idiot. Ugh! Why is this man here again? To annoy him even more, the Crown Prince teases him for being so concerned about Alyssa even if they haven't even slept together, as per rumor. Ha! That's where you're wrong, mister. Alyssa cuts him off and says how her baby will get hurt after hearing all the words he said. The men are all surprised when she mentions a baby. She explains that they are lucky enough to be blessed with a child this soon. She is quite upset at how they are all ganging up on Richard, even if he has done nothing wrong. Prince Christian cannot believe that Richard already has an heir before him. Richard and Alyssa then proceed to walk away. After ranting about how arrogant the nobles and the prince are, she apologizes for telling them without his permission. Later that night, they are back at home. Alyssa is now peacefully sleeping when a letter from Count Ardan is delivered. Richard is the one who receives it since he is still awake. Even though Ardan is just friends with Alyssa, he fears that he is simply waiting for them to get a divorce before he makes a move. A part of him wants to burn the letter, but if he does it, then she will be very disappointed. Shortly, Alyssa wakes up from her nap, so he gives the letter to her. The letter is actually from Ansel. It seems like he has already arrived at the Empire and he needs to talk to Alyssa the next day. The following day, while working, Richard is currently preoccupied with his thoughts. He is not listening to his assistant discuss how Count Halos wants to start a luminescent stone processing business with him. Since he is still distracted and unable to focus, he will have to think about it more. He then proceeds to go to their room while reminding himself to stop being so insecure. Richard is quite jealous of Ansel, even if he is just a friend to her. When he sees Alyssa wearing a stunning pink dress just to meet him, more jealousy creeps into him. Even though Alyssa looks perfect in her dress, he tells her to change her outfit because it is not beautiful. In fact, he is just insecure and jealous. No, don't let your petty jealousy win, Richard. Richard hates the fact that Alyssa always shows Ansel her pretty side. Even if this childish feeling is jealousy, there's nothing he can do. She's so pretty that anyone will fall in love with her. Richard, I totally agree. I mean, look at that face. Just gorgeous. He tells her he doesn't like the dress out of jealousy. Tears are slowly rushing down Alyssa's face, flustering Richard. His comments causing his wife to cry. Well, I would cry too if someone said I didn't look good in an outfit I couldn't wear for the next 9 months. At this point, Richard, who's unaware of how pregnancy hormones work, is kicked out of the room. It's all about the hormones, you guys. Richard wants to explain himself, but Alyssa's still currently in her hormonal tear storm. Richard apologizes to his wife by the door, wishes her luck with her talk with Count Ansel, and left after realizing how immature he had been. Poor Richard. Why did he even talk to her that way? While Alyssa's two servants help her in getting ready, they continue to discuss why the Duke said those things when the Duchess is actually quite splendid today. One of her attendants, Anne, questions if the Duke might not be aware of the current trends in fashion. He just gets jealous, girls, nothing about his taste in fashion. Despite realizing that she could have overreacted and that he might have just been honest, Alyssa is still appreciative of her servant's anger. The Duke caused his pregnant wife so much anguish in the first place, something he shouldn't be doing now when you won't be able to control your emotions. She wholeheartedly agrees that even though their pregnancy was unintentional, Richard is now a parent. That's right, Richard, husband up! As she marches to the garden after getting ready, she stops as she passes by the hallway where Richard's office is. She continues to walk, trying to stop herself from checking him out. Meanwhile, Count Ansel arrives and is welcomed by the house butler Grayson. Can I just stop and say that this guy sure knows his way into my heart? He is so cute. As Grayson leads him to the garden where the Duchess is waiting, Ansel feels a stabbing stare behind him, and it's from none other than Duke Rublin. Ansel recalls the Duke wasn't a friendly person when he was young, but he got colder after coming back from the battlefield. I tell you, it's not the battlefield that causes that dark aura you're feeling, it's probably you. Ansel wonders how Alyssa lives with him, or she was caught trying to divorce the Duke and had to return unwillingly. Then Alyssa appears to greet him like a ray of sunshine. They converse amicably about the past. When Ansel wonders about her happiness in her marriage to the Duke, Alyssa still mulls over how to respond. But one thing Alyssa knows is she doesn't feel unhappy with her life in the Duke's mansion. That, regardless of the fiery love they had, living with him is possible for they are old friends. The Count questions whether it's because the Duke, contrary to what he believes, is a good person. Calling the Duke a good man is undoubtedly a novel concept to them, as they suddenly recall the grumpy, icy Duke with a hint of sinister aura. But Alyssa convinces him that, in contrast to his exterior traits, the Duke is a nice man. So don't judge the Duke by his cover. Like anyone else, Ansel is in shock when he finds out Alyssa is pregnant, yet he still congratulates her. That stare! Poor blonde cutie. My heart aches for this guy. Alyssa suddenly remembers there was something Ansel wanted to say to her, and that is why he came to her. Upon knowing Alyssa's situation, with all the pregnancy stuff, he can't afford to bring up what he saw at the villa in Sornetti. Richard is waiting for his wife and the Count's conversation to end while keeping hawk-like eyes on the scene. However, a flower tree is obstructing his view of the garden, so he's unable to see clearly. Poor innocent tree. He's even thinking of pulling it out. Any minute the two appear, and when Richard finally feels at ease, Ansel kisses Alyssa's hand goodbye. Hold on, what is this picturesque scene? I'm having butterflies in my stomach right now. But of course, our Richard feels the opposite. After all, that's his wife. Richard shoots death stares at Ansel as he thought of never letting him enter his mansion ever again. What a look! If looks could kill, Richard might be a criminal right now. Richard and Alyssa's eyes meet, but it appears that Alyssa's still mad at him. I guess the storm hasn't died down yet. Good luck, Richard. For now, let's talk about what happened in the past. More than 20 years ago, Pope Aiden, who returned from the canyon, poured his divinity into the temple and its outskirts to protect the powerless and the poor from the invasion of the monsters. The next day, Alyssa visits a temple where she has an appointment with someone who's an acquaintance of the Marchioness she met. To her surprise, the man she's supposed to meet, who is talking with the Marchioness, is the Pope. What an unexpected meetup. Alyssa's luck must be within her favor. His Holiness extends her a warm welcome and ushers her inside. Alyssa conveys to him her intention of making regular donations to the temple, but to her surprise, her offer was politely declined. The Pope explains with great solemnity that the power he wields is meant for the people and is from the goddess, which is why he rejected any form of donation and remained steadfastly neutral. Although rejected, Alyssa quickly grasps the weight of her request. Donations often led to an increase in family influence, and the temple could easily become embroiled in a power struggle. In this regard, the Pope's stance wasn't entirely unfounded. Well, they're not completely wrong. Alyssa is caught up with the sincerity of wanting to help, and the benefits she'll take from that would overlap. In the end, she decides to take matters into her own hands. Alyssa wants to cooperate with the shrine for political reasons, but her true desire was to protect and educate orphans, a duty she believes the royal family should have upheld, yet the shrine assumed this role for 2 decades. The next day, Alyssa gracefully shows herself in the temple with her servant with a plan in mind. The Duchess looks pretty determined. She plans to pretend to accidentally bump into the Pope while on her way to pray. While waiting, they are caught up on a withering flower. Her servant went to get water for the lifeless flower when suddenly, the lifeless flower came back to life. What in the world was that? Did we see it right? Suddenly, the Pope appears behind her like how she imagined, but His Holiness only blessed her and bid his goodbye with a smile. Alyssa is disappointed about not being able to have a conversation with His Holiness since he seems entirely disinterested. Based on the coldness on that friendly face, it seems the Pope caught her plan. But the Duchess won't give up. She's the kind of person who will try 11 times if she fails 10 times. That's the spirit, Alyssa. Meanwhile, the night comes. Richard wants to read a fairy tale for the baby, and Alyssa thinks maybe he thought she's still mad with him. Save the man! He looks too cute when he's in distress. Richard starts to read the book, and Alyssa is out of words because he reads like a log. Ugh! The future daddy is so cute. Alyssa teaches him how to read with life. She didn't think he cares about the baby that much to do this kind of stuff. Alyssa finds him cute and unconsciously touches his face. Alyssa, stop yourself! You're blushing too much! Well, you both are. Embarrassed with what happened, she went to bed, leaving Richard still confused. Following her encounter with Pope Aiden, Alyssa's engagement at the temple grows significantly. She becomes regularly present, frequently offering prayers, tending to the ill at the shrine, and generously gifting presents to the children. Her acts of kindness and her benevolent nature earned her a praise from the temple's priests, who recognized her warm heart. One day, His Holiness unexpectedly witnesses Alyssa in the temple, and her sincere actions spark a profound realization in the Pope. In the shrine, the children eagerly await the arrival of the Duchess. However, they are informed by the priest that the Duchess will not be coming due to her health. The Pope observes their concern and disappointment, recognizing the Duchess's dedication. He contemplates something, dismissing it for the moment. Is he warming up to the Duchess? Meanwhile, in the Cairot royal family, the Emperor and the Empress seek an heir for Crown Prince Christian. The Crown Prince's 4-year absence from his princess is no secret, leaving the throne without an heir. This rumor circulated during the hunting festival, much to everyone's amusement. Who calls this a marriage? The Empress even pressures the couple by comparing them to the Rublins, who are expecting a child. The Emperor requests the head maid to find a child with royal blood as a temporary substitute. Seriously? Has the Emperor gone crazy? The Crown Princess's attempts to bridge the gap with the Crown Prince are continually met with rejection, intensifying her frustration. The persistent rumor about their lack of intimacy only fuels her anxiety about not being able to fulfill her role as the Crown Princess. To make matters worse, Alyssa's presence seems to compound the Crown Princess's humiliation, leading to an even deeper resentment towards her. Girl, it's not your fault you're not attractive in your husband's eyes! Is this jealousy speaking? The Crown Princess calls a maid to handle Alyssa discreetly. She's willing to stoop this low? She's this crazy? Amidst it all, Alyssa receives a heartfelt letter from the shrine's children, brimming with longing and warm wishes. Their sweet words bring her immense joy, inspiring her to bake cookies and buy fairy tale books for the children. Setting out with her servant Anna, they make their way to the nearest bookstore. However, as Alyssa scans the bustling city square, she spots the royal guards patrolling, casting a shadow of concern over her day. Undeterred, she continues her quest to find fairy tale books for the children. This doesn't look like good news. Alyssa starts finding fairy tale books for the kids when she sees a kid steal a book. Alyssa stops the kid and lectures him about stealing, but the owner saw the kid holding the book. He pulls him closer, preparing to hit him. Easy there, sir. It's just a kid. Before the owner of the bookstore can even hit the poor kid, Alyssa stops him and commends him for being a coward for hitting a child thrice his size. You tell them, girl. It seems like the owner doesn't recognize the Duchess of Rublin by the way he tells her to stop interfering. So she introduces herself, making the owner back out fearfully, not wanting to deal with the knights guarding outside the bookstore. Yes! Know who you're messing with! Alyssa scolds the owner for resorting to violence, purchases the stolen book, and invites the child to accompany her. The boy, named Leon, clings to her dress. Alyssa realizes the name Leon is that name of the love rival of Haynes in the novel, the male lead. Leon is the illegitimate son of the Crown Prince Christian. That's why she failed to recognize the special red hair, because the kid was so different from his arrogant father. Well, where's the lie, though? That jerk is far from a cutie like Leon. Alyssa has a sudden recollection, drawing a parallel between the present and events from the novel. In the story, the royal family's pursuit of Christian's illegitimate son is linked to the presence of the patrolling royal guards. Rose's sinister plot to eliminate Leon led to a chase by assassins, forcing him into a dire situation that unleashed his uncontrollable powers. Tragically, his powers resulted in the accidental destruction of a nearby village. Subsequently, the royal family discovered him, subjecting him to a challenging upbringing like Richard. Alyssa can't leave an orphan like Leon vulnerable. She can only think of the Pope, but the Pope has his doubts. Alyssa understands the weight of the favor she asks out of him. To hide an imperial child is burdensome. More, a child who the royal family is trying to kill. Alyssa assures the Pope that she will find evidence and asks him to trust her and accept Leon. After a short contemplation, the Pope decides if the child's in danger, she can leave him. He explains that his ability is still very dangerous, for he cannot yet control it. Indeed, how can a child control such power? He might hurt himself. Alyssa hopes that His Holiness can ignite the warmth within him, using it to kindle the fire in Leon's heart, as she sees him as the kindest soul she's ever known. Aww, Alyssa is really good with her words. Deep in thought, Alyssa is on a mission to swiftly gather evidence. Fortunately, in the novel, the Crown Princess Rose recruited the guild's mercenaries rather than the Raymore family's loyal soldiers. These money-driven mercenaries are more malleable, making it easier for Alyssa to track them down. Her deep thoughts are cut when Richard enters the room. Oh, so handsome Richard. Okay, back to the story. Alyssa talks about her day and her goal of finding the evidence. She stops herself because she thinks what she said is quite unbelievable. But Richard assures Alyssa he believes her as he grabs both her hands. The way he stares at her is so romantic. I could melt instead. The next day, Richard greets the mercenaries by kicking the doors in headquarters. Using his powers, getting the evidence was quite a piece of cake. Anything for his wifey. As the Duke prepares to leave, he becomes aware of the presence of someone. The strange man is determined to catch up with him, but before he can even approach him, Richard finds him first. He's back. It's Ansel. Richard and Count Ansel sit facing each other as they talk about what happened a while ago. Ansel is there to find out just how much Richard loves Alyssa before he confesses the truth. Richard is uneasy and a little irritated with the question, but waits to hear what Ansel has to say. The thing Ansel wanted to tell Alyssa the last time was about what he saw in the villa in Sornetti. Alyssa told Ansel to buy and fix Viscount Lohengrin's villa in Sornetti because she intended to live there after getting divorced. Ansel waited for her there only to meet the old man who introduces himself as a lifelong doctor in the villa, and had been Alyssa's physician and revealed that Alyssa had died 8 years ago. As confusion clouds their minds, Richard realizes that the current Alyssa is concealing her true identity, potentially putting her in danger if the truth were to come out. Ansel is taken aback by Richard's lack of surprise, but Richard reaffirms that Alyssa is his family and his love for her remains unwavering. Aww, this level of devotion is swoon-worthy, but I can see that Richard still has many questions. Following his conversation with Ansel, Richard visits his slumbering wife. Watching her sleep, he is convinced that Alyssa didn't deceive him into marriage, as their union was arranged by Albert. Alyssa's memory loss means that Albert had lied about her true identity from the beginning. Even in death, that old man irritates me so much. Realizing the dead cannot tell tales, Richard instructs one of his trusted guards, Thompson, to locate Aaron Clore, the former assistant who might have the answers he seeks. Meanwhile, Rose, who is furious after receiving a letter from the guild refusing her trust, totally deserve it, she decides to take matters into her own hands. She resolves to steal the child herself. Alyssa awakens to the son's gentle embrace, her day calling for a visit to the temple. She is comfortable with him taking care of her so well these days. She's literally blushing while remembering Richard's sleepy touches last night. Anne delivers a menacing letter to Alyssa from the Crown Princess. Rose should stop ruining mornings from now on, but Alyssa can't hide her smirks and excitement at its contents. The letter is a surprising invitation from the Crown Princess herself to visit the palace, and Alyssa discerns its true motive: Leon. A seemingly friendly encounter unfolds between Alyssa and Rose, marked by insincere smiles and artificial pleasantries. This is obviously the battle of fake smiles. Can this be any more authentic? Alyssa even thinks that Rose is so ridiculous as she serves her tea that's unfit for a pregnant woman. What is she doing? First Leon, now the unborn child in Alyssa's womb? Just stop, Rose. Rose shows her interest in Alyssa's charitable works to the poor children and shows her gratitude as a member of the royal family. You should be. The royal family should have done that responsibility. She also hints at gathering information, which Alyssa cunningly redirects towards securing royal family donations. Rose can't resist provoking Alyssa further, divulging the real purpose behind the tea ceremony. Leon. Alyssa feigns ignorance, stoking Rose's anger. She warns that Richard will expose Rose's actions to His Majesty, emphasizing that hiding a child related to the imperial family requires evidence. A brief exchange of insults about their origins ensues, but Alyssa emerges victorious by presenting concrete evidence of her trying to harm an innocent child. Alyssa bids Rose farewell with a disarmingly pleasant smile, concealing the battle of wills that just took place. It's a masterclass in assertive diplomacy. And that's what you call savage. Alyssa carries on with her usual routine, heading to the shrine for the kids, when unexpectedly Richard expresses a desire to accompany her and check on Leon. Richard, who had a similar childhood, might be better able to help Leon. That's why Alyssa agrees to go with him. Richard worries that the young kid knows nothing. Soon he'll discover that he has a different power than the others. Maybe Richard can help him in controlling his power. As they arrive at the shrine, the people can't help but wonder about the seemingly cold man accompanying the sweet Alyssa. Richard, can you at least smile? Even the priest walks on eggshells with you. Suddenly, the once red-haired Leon is running towards Alyssa, whom he now calls sister with blonde hair. He's been introduced to the shrine as a distant relative of the Pope, hence the disguise with a blonde wig to avoid suspicion. Alyssa wishes to speak with the Pope, leaving Leon in Richard's care. Richard, although looking a bit forlorn at her departure, cradles Leon in his arms as they head to Leon's room. Aww, his tender gesture makes me so excited for their own baby. Leon asks Richard how he knows his sister Alyssa. Richard answers they are a couple, two people who got married. Leon innocently tells Richard that he's going to marry her too. So cute. I'm gonna put him in my pocket and keep him safe forever. Amazed at how good Leon's eyes are for girls, he tells Leon he can't marry her because she's married to him. What a way to kill a child's hopes and dreams. The poor baby cries his heart out. But as a father-to-be, Richard has a little know-how on a crying kid. Candy. Leon suddenly bolts and tries to start a fire. Richard assumes he was playing with fire, but young Leon just wants to warm them up. So sweet of him. Richard is astounded by how, at his age, he embodies a portion of the power he lacked as a child. This realization helps Richard understand why Alyssa cares for this boy, as he reminds her of his own childhood. Richard uses his wind power to help Leon create the fire, and Leon's eyes gleam with delight when they successfully produce the flame. Richard playfully taps Leon's head to compliment him on his accomplishment. Meanwhile, Pope Aiden meets with Alyssa, intending to share a confession with her. The Pope has something to confess to Alyssa. He tells her that despite being a godly person, he doesn't actually believe in God. How contradictory. He recalls that when the Duchess left Leon with him, she described him as the most upright man she'd ever seen. But now he confesses that he was not very upright, for he uses the authority of God to protect those who he wants to protect. His selfishness does not compare to the Duchess's goodwill. In his mind, the Pope thinks that the Duchess has the power to protect people without losing her own light. And so, the Pope finally asks Alyssa to help him in the temple, a request that Alyssa is more than happy to oblige. At the Rubilin residence later on, Alyssa is getting ready for bed. She notices that the nightgown she's wearing is standing out too much. She is about to change into something else, but Richard suddenly enters their room. I gotta hand it to you, Richard. You sure have great timing. He notices the slightly revealing nightgown, and the two of them end up looking like ripe tomatoes. Alyssa explains that Anne picked it up for her, but she's only now realizing that it's too thin. Richard, ever the gentleman, places a blanket around her shoulder to protect her from the cold. As her husband ushers her to bed, she begins thinking that Richard did not even say that the gown looked good on her, so she asks him if he thinks it is pretty. But when he replies that it is and it suits her, he also adds that her stomach is growing big. Oh, wrong move, Richard. Pregnant hormones ensue. He tucks her to bed, but she is frozen in shock. She is so embarrassed that he probably thinks she has gained weight. She is so pissed off with him that she smacks his arm. Richard is confused as to why his wife is acting like this, but with a quite sinister laugh, she reasons that she saw a fly land on his arm. Poor Richard. You should learn how to deal with your wife's mood swing soon. The next morning, Alyssa is quite guilty that she acted that way. She is well aware that it is natural for her belly to grow since she's pregnant, so she shouldn't get angry at Richard for no reason. She is beginning to notice that her emotions are all over the place, and she realizes that it is all because she wants to look pretty in front of Richard. She convinces herself that she doesn't have to, because why would she want to look pretty for a friend? Right then, her train of thought is interrupted by a sudden realization. Could it be that she has fallen for her incredibly handsome husband? How is that even a question? Also, how are you only realizing this now? Alyssa feels like a fool for not connecting the dots sooner. She actually likes Richard, not just as a friend, but as a man. With this knowledge, what is she supposed to do? Well, I don't know. Tell him, perhaps? Later on, the doctor checks on Alyssa's condition. She assures the couple that the baby is growing healthy. She advises them to talk to the baby a lot, and since this is a stable time, Alyssa can eat whatever she wants, and they can even go on picnics. As for the thing that couples do, the doctor advises that they do it gently so as not to strain anyone. Alyssa and Richard can only blush as they listen to the doctor. They are so cute when they are embarrassed. When the doctor leaves, Alyssa invites Richard to go on a picnic in the suburbs. However, he tells her that they should do it later because she had a fever earlier and that it could be bad for the child. Once more, Alyssa's temper gets the better of her and exclaims that as precious as the child is, Richard should also value her. Shocked that she shouted at him, Alyssa apologizes and runs away, leaving an even more worried Richard behind. Back in their room, Alyssa is once again feeling guilty for being mad at Richard, especially since he was just worried for her. A moment later, Richard enters the room as well. Then he kneels before her, apologizing for not thinking about how she feels. He tells her that she is precious and that he wants to do better for her. OMG, no one can ask for a better husband. He confesses that this is the first time that he has someone who is valuable to him, so he is quite clumsy. He holds her hand, and all he asks of her is to like him a little. Gosh, if you only knew her feelings too, Richard. I am practically bursting with excitement right now. Alyssa, while looking at his sincere expression, wonders if it is right for her to hope that he also has feelings for her. So she takes her chance and she tells him that she likes him a lot, shocking him. However, she deprecatingly tells him that their feelings are quite different. She apologizes and declares that she'll sleep alone. When she turns to leave, Richard embraces her from behind, asking if she really means what she said. She is so embarrassed that she tries to deny it, but he turns her around, wanting to know the truth. She is in tears and she doesn't answer, so Richard decides to show her what he means instead. He holds her face and he leans towards her until their lips meet. Right then, he tells her that he loves her a lot. Oh my god, finally! The most awaited confession. Evidently, Alyssa is still insecure about their relationship, and despite Richard's confession, she thinks that he is only taking responsibility for her since they are a married couple. But Richard is quick to prove her wrong. He embraces his weeping wife and assures her that he doesn't love her because she is his wife. He loves her because she is Alyssa. My heart is bursting right now. This moment is so precious. I just can't help it. He continues by saying that he's been loving her for a long time, but he never told her because he was scared that his love would become a burden for her. As he wipes the tears on Alyssa's cheeks, he apologizes. He recounts that his life was once all about revenge, but now all he wants is to live happily with her. He takes her hand and holds it to his chest as he asks her if she's willing to fulfill his wish of a life with her. Right then, Alyssa gathers her courage to tell him that their wish is the same. She kisses him and confesses that she loves him too. Oh, they are so lucky to have each other. Later on, while Alyssa is in her chambers and still feeling giddy about the love she shares with her husband, a letter from the royal palace arrives. She has been invited to a tea party. She is instantly suspicious about Rose's and the Empress's intention, especially since she just had a fight with Rose not long ago. But still, she relays that she will definitely attend. At the elegant tea party held in the Imperial Palace, guests begin wondering where the Duchess Alyssa and Marchioness Olivia are. We then find out that the Empress has ordered Rose to give the two varying invitations. Wrong information is written on those invitations, stating a different time and a different dress code. Ugh, these two! Always trying to ruin things for Alyssa. Rose made sure that even though the two consolidate with each other, they will only think that the dress code is a lie. No matter what they wear, they will still lose face. Huh, we'll see about that. Right when the guests begin talking about how the two ladies do not respect the Empress, Alyssa, along with Marchioness Olivia, arrive at the scene. With a bright smile, Alyssa apologizes for being late, using the horrible traffic as an excuse. Rose is horrified to discover that the two are actually somewhat on time and are wearing the correct dress code. Unfortunately for her, our Alyssa is smart. Rather than asking Countess Olivia about the validity of the invitation, she asks a third person, Countess Halos. She learns the true details of the tea party, proving once again that it is difficult to one-up her crown princess. Alyssa feigns confusion before the guests about the strange details in her invitation. She tells everyone that someone might have misunderstood her relationship with the crown princess when in fact, the princess actually cares for her. At this point, the crown princess turns to the maid whom she ordered to write the letter, and she smacks her in the face, all so she will not be blamed for the mishap. Meanwhile, Richard meets with his grandfather's old aide. After he is congratulated for having a child on the way, Richard instantly asks him where his grandfather took Alyssa. The aide replies that he doesn't know all the details except that the late Duke brought Alyssa from somewhere. He was then ordered to disguise the young Miss's identity with an appropriate family name. He explains that that night, in the forest of the sacred trees, the late Duke separated from them, carrying Alyssa. The Duke was looking for a wise man, a name given to those who had become one with the sacred tree. When Richard asks him why his grandfather wants to find the wise man, the aide is also clueless, but he does tell him that the late Duke thought that he had found the answer. Richard is bewildered because what could he possibly mean by that? Ooh, we love a good mystery! At this point, we are all dying to know who Alyssa really is! Richard knows that there must be some kind of clue in the forest of the sacred trees, so he orders Thompson to research about the forest. As for Alyssa, the founding festival is just a few days away, so she is busy giving out goods and items to the temple. Suddenly, she sees a child pulling out various flowers in the garden, only to discover that it's Leon. The adorable kid is happy to see her and greets her with a bright smile. He claims that he is pulling out weeds, but he is pulling out more flowers than grass. But it doesn't matter. He seems to be enjoying it, even though he is practically murdering the plants. You're lucky you're so cute, Leon. Alyssa then encourages Leon to wash up, otherwise the crow will come and ask to be his friend. Rather than be afraid, Leon actually wants to be friends with the crow, so he refuses to wash up. Alyssa has to chase after him as he runs around pretending to be a bird. Ah, cuteness overload. But then the moment is ruined because, unfortunately, Leon ends up bumping into Crown Prince Christian. Leon instantly goes to her for comfort, especially because the prince begins ranting about his suit getting dirty. Ugh, what a diva! Get over yourself! Even though Leon says he's sorry, the prince still insults him. Well, I'm not so surprised that he's picking a fight with a literal child because he has the mental capacity of one. Alyssa has no choice but to apologize on behalf of Leon. Despite that, the prince continues to speak his bigoted thoughts, calling Leon's father and mother stupid. Ha! If you only knew that you are literally insulting yourself right now, Christian! However, the mention of his mother angers Leon. Sparks of fire begin forming in his hand, all because the prince called his mother stupid. Alyssa panics, not wanting Christian to learn about Leon's identity, so she grasps Leon's hand without a second thought. Thankfully, the fire is put out after a faint blue light appears from her hand for a second. It is a good thing that the prince is too much of an airhead to notice what just happened. When Christian leaves to meet with the Pope, Leon apologizes for hurting her. She assures him that she wasn't hurt at all, but she asks him not to use fire on other people. Now that they are out of that situation, Alyssa finally notices that her hands aren't burned at all. Does this mean what I think it means? Right then, Richard arrives, and Leon happily goes to him. Even though the child is still covered in dirt, he lifts him up into his arms. Seeing him care so much about Leon makes Alyssa smile warmly. The two of them look like father and son. When Leon is finally clean, he notices that Alyssa's belly is growing. He thinks that it is because she ate too much, but Alyssa fondly explains that there's a baby in her belly. Like any curious child, Leon asks how this happens, so Alyssa looks pointedly at Richard. You two are not subtle at all. Alyssa opts for a simple answer and explains that when you kiss someone you like, you will have a baby. To her horror, Leon asks her that since he likes her, will she have a baby if he kisses her? What? This child is so random! So she frantically explains that he shouldn't go around kissing people. Meanwhile, Marquise Dion comes home to Princess Michaela. Seeing that he is drunk, she reprimands him for drinking too much, but he is upset because the Duke of Rublin ignored him during the meeting. The princess is enraged as well, calling the Duke and Duchess arrogant. Suddenly, the butler informs him of a visit from Viscount Magenta that morning. The Marquis is annoyed that the man keeps on telling about his series of failed business. But then he remembers an item the Viscount is trying to sell him. Instantly, he turns back to the butler and orders him to inform his uncle that he'll come to see him. While in a carriage, Richard is deep in thought. He is thinking about the investigation of the sacred forest and the surrounding area. He hoped he would find something, but even though he tried checking the villages around the forest, he failed to find anything. He is so distracted that he fails to hear Alyssa calling him. When he finally notices, she is already worried for him. Alyssa caringly asks him if he is hurt somewhere, and Richard replies that he is fine. On the contrary, he should be the one taking care of her. Alyssa smiles like the sun and declares that she and the baby are strong. The couple then arrives at the National Day celebration where tons of people are gathered, nobles and commoners alike. Suddenly, she notices that Marquis Dion is present along with Princess Michaela. She also notes that he came with many knights. Suspicious? I think so too. What evil plans do these two have? One thing about National Day is that it is so boring. The nobles, including Alyssa, can barely stand to sit there and listen to the endless sermons. It's a good thing that the play is different this time. It talks about how the goddess gave her 3 children powers to defeat the Demon King and bring peace to the humans. The children became masters of their own families, but they couldn't defeat the Demon King until Kairat, who has the red flame powers, helped them. Together, the 4 of them killed the Demon King. Soon after, Kairat is crowned the Emperor. But peace does not last, for the demon clans regain their strength. Aryan of the Serat family sacrificed himself to protect the first Emperor, the one she loved. She made a purified lake on the polluted land to block the demon's trap there. Unknowingly, tears begin to flow down Alyssa's cheeks as she watches on. Richard is concerned, but she tells him that she's just really into the story. However, out of nowhere, chaos suddenly ensues. Monsters are attacking the shrine. There's pandemonium as everyone attempts to escape. Richard is by Alyssa's side in an instant, leading to her safety. But then she notices that the commoners have no one to protect them, so she begs Richard to go and help them. However, Richard wants to keep her safe first, so she convinces him that she has Thompson with her and that he'll keep her safe. Reluctantly, Richard goes to do as she says, but not before telling her that he'll be right back. Richard uses the control of the air around them to help out as much as he can, killing the monsters with much precision. However, he can't help but notice that it is strange that monsters go all the way there when they rarely ever leave the forest. Meanwhile, Thompson is doing his best to guide Alyssa to safety, but suddenly, more and more monsters descend on them. He does his best to fight them off. However, one is heading towards Alyssa. Thompson has no time to do anything other than protect Alyssa with his own body, getting injured in the process. Oh no, Thompson! When he hears Alyssa scream, Richard's attention goes to her in an instant. Seeing his wife in trouble and fearing for her life, a dark aura engulfs him. The air he wields is now dark, and straight away, all the monsters in the area are no more. When the monsters are all dead and Richard has descended from the air, Alyssa is frightened to see her husband that way. She goes straight to him and embraces him, asking him to wake up. A bright light appears from her hand, and suddenly, Richard is back to normal. OMG! We really are close to learning the truth. Alyssa is in tears as she holds her husband's face, worrying about him. He then wraps her in his arms and assures her of her safety. Meanwhile, the Emperor is more than angry. He is fuming. The celebration is ruined because of the attack. He gives credit to Marquis Dion's knight for helping in the situation. What? It was all Richard! He defeated all those monsters! This Emperor is so clueless! That is the time that the Marquis and the Princess begin their devious plan by expressing concern for the commoners who have no protection from the monsters. The Marquis informs the Emperor of a monster-fighting perfume that his uncle, Viscount Magenta, has created. Apparently, it is meant to repel monsters, and so the Emperor gives his permission to sell items to the people. OMG, was this all a business venture? What is wrong with you people? To make matters worse, the Marquis even gets Richard in trouble by accusing him of negligence since the area where the shrine is was his responsibility, implying that the attack was his fault. Ugh, this man is certainly claiming a higher spot in our hate list. In the aftermath of the attack, the Pope puts up a massive shield, and Alyssa is amazed by the scale of his ability. Richard then asks her to return to their residence first, as he will remain since there are still monsters out there. Later on, the Pope checks on his back and is surprised by the dark energy coming from Richard. The Duke explains that this power began manifesting when he had pain in his back after a ceremony around the end of March. In his mind, the Pope is certain that this isn't just bad energy. This one digs into the soul and sticks to it. He informs the Duke that it is difficult to purify this energy at the moment. He tells him he will try later when he's able to use his full strength. The Pope warns him to keep his distance from the Duchess for a while in case something like that happens again. Richard reluctantly agrees to his advice. Left alone, the Pope contemplates what he saw Alyssa do to Richard during the attack. It is definitely divine power. He is certain that Viscount Lohengrin has no relation to the Serat family, but there is a possibility of them having a distant ancestor. But why does he end up thinking about his beloved Juliana and her lost child? He had searched and searched for their child's body after he was informed that it was born prematurely. But in the end, he became the worst father for not being able to find his child's body. But now, here he is having pitiful hopes once again. Okay, calm down, everyone. We really are getting to see the puzzle pieces come together. Could this be true? Back in the Rubelin residence, Alyssa is deep in thought. She knows for sure that someone has deliberately dragged those monsters into the temple. Suddenly, Anne comes bursting through the door, worrying for her, even though it is her day off. The kind maid is so concerned for her that she rushes to see her. She then shows the Duchess an item she brought for her. It's a monster repellent complete with the Emperor's certificate. Huh, well, you look at that. That attack is definitely a marketing strategy. They should work in PR. Alyssa is so bemused that just because after the monster attack, this monster repellent starts being sold in the market. How dare they look down on them? Right then, Agwil arrives, and with a dark look on her face, she orders an investigation in the forest. Everyone is gathered to discuss the monster raid on the temple. Duke Richard Rubelin is in charge of the security of the outskirts. However, it seems like he has neglected his responsibility since a disaster happened. Just before he is held accountable for the incident, Richard reveals a recent discovery. He presents a clutch of onyx eggs. Monster eggs typically found deep within the forest. According to him, these creatures migrate south during the winter to escape the cold, but it's unusual for them to venture beyond the forest boundaries. However, the onyx eggs he presents were found in a village far beyond their usual territory. Clearly, someone did this on purpose, and only one person stands to gain from such a scheme. Viscount Magenta, the uncle of Marquise Dion, stands to benefit the most from the appearance of monsters. By luring them toward the temple, he deliberately spread fear among the people, making his monster repellent invention highly profitable. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Marquise Dion quickly opposes Richard's claims, calling them baseless and overly speculative, just assumptions based on a few eggs. However, a witness has come forward, stating that Viscount Magenta recently borrowed a large sum of money to hire several wagons. Moreover, the fact that Viscount Magenta's business was on the verge of bankruptcy only adds to the suspicion. Strangely enough, he suddenly came into a large sum of money shortly after meeting with Marquise Dion. Marquise Dion immediately denies the accusation, insisting he would never lend money without knowing its purpose. To uncover the truth, they simply need proof that he was aware of its purpose all along, and the only person who can confirm that is the Viscount himself. The guards then haul Viscount Magenta into the room. In his possession is a ledger he wrote himself, clear evidence that the Marquise was aware of the purpose of their transaction. Yet he continues to deny everything, insisting he's being framed and claiming that the ledger is fabricated. The Viscount solemnly swears that he is telling the truth about the ledger. He explains that he was deceived by the devil's cunning schemes and as a result committed a grave sin. On the other hand, Marquise Dion strongly insists that the entire situation is a setup. Despite this, the Emperor holds him accountable and he must face the consequences of the incident. Fortunately for him, His Highness is willing to show mercy, given that today is a day of celebration for the Empire. However, Richard strongly objects, arguing that the Marquise did not only endanger His Majesty, but also the people. Countless lives were lost in the slums and many more were left injured. I agree, he deserves to be punished for hurting the people. He committed treason, and such a grave offense calls for a fitting punishment. Everyone in the room agrees without protest, putting the Emperor in a tight spot. Without a choice, he strips Marquise Dion of his title. A few days later, the news spreads quickly and eventually reaches Alyssa. At this time, she and Richard remain apart because of the dark energy still lingers within him. Until the dark energy is purged from Richard, he and Alyssa cannot be together. In the meantime, he pours his attention on books, searching for any information about the darkness within him. Thoughts of her fill his mind when suddenly a rock shatters his window. Richard is taken aback by the sudden crash of a stone through his window. When he looks outside, he sees Alyssa standing with a notebook, her maid Anne accompanying her. It's clear she came to check on him as worry and longing is written all over her face. She does her best to lift his spirits and eventually succeeds. He has been tirelessly combing through books and records day and night, yet he hasn't found any answers. The lack of progress has clearly worn him down. Gently, she reassures him that she'll find a way to get him out of the annex soon. Her visit, though somewhat impulsive, turns out to be just what he needed. In the temple, Pope Aiden is focused on caring for the injured when the paternity test reagent made from mana he had requested earlier is finally delivered. He explains that he intends to use it for someone in urgent need. In truth, he intends to use the mana for himself. If Alyssa inherited the Serat family's power from someone, he's determined to uncover exactly who that person was. Obtaining Alyssa's hair has been a challenge, but luckily, a few strands had fallen naturally while she was playing with Leon in the break room. Now, doubts begin to creep into His Holiness's mind, leaving him uncertain about whether he should go through with his plan. Eventually, he proceeds with his plan since it's good to have a certain system anyway. He then transfers the hair strand to test it with the mana. Everyone is born with a certain amount of mana within them, and each person's mana possesses unique properties. The closer the blood relation, the more similar these properties tend to be. The paternity test reagent is crafted using the unique characteristics of His Holiness's mana. When it comes into contact with mana of a closely matching nature, the reagent turns blue. Surprisingly, the reagent turns blue. Seeing the result, he's instantly reminded of a conversation he once had with his late wife Ulia before. She had told him that she dreamt of having a daughter who resembled him. A bright, excited look lit up her face as she spoke of their future daughter, one who would be a perfect blend of them both. The memory overwhelms Aiden and he breaks down on the spot. Oh my gosh, Alyssa is his long-lost daughter all along! Richard cannot help but worry about Alyssa moving around too much on their way to get purified. Still, she insists on staying by his side as His Holiness performs the ritual for him. Momentarily, Leon spots her and immediately rushes over, with Aiden following closely behind. He tells Richard to go inside the temple alone for the purification. Right after cleansing, the pain vanishes completely, but over time it slowly returns, though not as intensely as before. His Holiness specifically mentions that Alyssa must be deeply concerned. For some reason, Richard feels as though His Holiness is disapproving of him. I wonder why. Once they're done, Alyssa hurries over to check on him. Aiden, following closely behind, invites her to walk with him. As they stroll, he asks how much she knows about divine powers. Admittedly, all she knows is that he embodies the power of the Serat family. And indeed, it's true. The power reveals itself only to those who carry the family's bloodline. Aiden gestures toward the withered flowers and instructs Alyssa to pretend she's using her powers to water them. Surprisingly, her hands instinctively begin to emit a purifying energy capable of cleansing harmful forces. She then questions aloud if her newfound power is somehow connected to him. In response, he asks if she's ready to face the truth, that the people she believed were her family weren't actually real, and her true family is still alive. Alyssa quickly realizes that His Holiness is hinting he might be her father, leaving her stunned. Sensing her shock, he gently reassures her that there's no pressure to accept the truth immediately. All he asks is for her to visit the temple from time to time like usual. With that, he reminds her not to burden herself too much. Later that night, as Richard reads to her, he notices that Alyssa seems distant and preoccupied. Sensing something's off, he assumes it's because of her earlier conversation with Aiden and gently asks about it. With that, she admits for the first time out loud that His Holiness is her father. Alyssa opens up to Richard about her real father. The reason behind Alyssa's divine powers is because she is related to His Holiness. Admittedly, Richard already knows, although not entirely. He explains that shortly after the Hunt Festival, the Count of Ardan, Ansel, paid him a personal visit. While fixing up the Sornetti villa on Alyssa's behalf, the Count happened to encounter the personal physician of the real Alyssa. From that encounter, he discovered that the original Alyssa had already passed away. In fact, her current appearance differed significantly from the portrait of the real Alyssa. Richard apologizes for not telling her sooner, admitting he was afraid of how she might react. He confesses that he had hoped to quietly find her real family first and tell her everything later, rather than burdening her with the truth right away. Alyssa feels uncertain about what to think or feel. Her only memories of her parents come from her past life, but those memories are distant and cold-marked mostly by pain and scars. She didn't have a good relationship with her parents in her previous life, but now imagining her father, who may be a bit distant but is upright, kind, and respectful, she feels something different. Though she doesn't know him well yet, Aiden seems like a good man, and she wants to get to know him better as her father. Seeing this, Richard suggests they visit him together the next day. The next day, His Holiness seems to be expecting someone. Priest Silica even notices that he's been watching the doorway all day as if he's waiting for someone's arrival. The Pope tries to deny it, but just then Alyssa and Richard arrive. Priest Silica almost exposes His Holiness, so he was asked to leave the place for a while. Now, awkwardness fills the air as the three of them sit in silence. Richard notes how both father and daughter look so much alike, as well as their mannerisms. Wow, she acts and looks exactly like her father. Richard breaks the silence and greets his father-in-law formally. His Holiness speaks formally as well, so Alyssa encourages him to speak comfortably. She hesitates calling him father, and he notices it, so he gently tells her not to be burdened by the call, and she can call him anything she wants. Moments later, Alyssa shares that she doesn't remember anything before she was 12. She had an accident when she was young, and when she regained consciousness, she was already in the Duchy of Rubalin. She has been living there ever since, and that's when she got married to Richard. Hearing this, Aiden is surprisingly worried that she got into an accident. He expresses his gratitude that she's alive and well. Meanwhile, Alyssa also expresses how glad she is to have met her father, which melts his heart. He remembers Ulia's words about how he can't help loving her. Indeed, she's right. Aiden has come to love her enough to do anything for her, which Ulia must have felt. The Tower of Truth is a place Argyle would never have returned to if he hadn't been ordered to gather information. True to its name, the tower houses an extensive collection of books filled with knowledge from all corners of the world. The Tower of Truth is also known as a place where countless parents abandon their children. Believing their sons and daughters might secure a better future through studying in the tower, many left them there with hope, but without ever looking back. Argyle, too, had been abandoned and spent his early years in the Tower of Truth. As soon as he was old enough to fend for himself, he left the place behind. Now that he has returned to the tower, the memories of its countless books come rushing back. But his current mission takes priority, which is to uncover information about the mysterious power and the contaminated land as quickly as possible. Suddenly, as he opens a book about the first king, Junaid, a strange magic suddenly begins to stir. While at the Rubalin mansion, Alyssa makes plans to visit the Imperial Palace Library to determine the exact origin of the dark power within Richard. If she can uncover where it came from, she might be able to purify it more easily using her holy power. Soon after, Argyle arrives. It turns out that Richard had ordered him to the Tower of Truth to gather information. However, despite searching through every book he could, he reports that he found nothing useful. Or rather, he found the information but just couldn't remember it. He reports that while exploring the deeper sections of the bookshelves, he suddenly lost consciousness and collapsed. At first, Argyle couldn't recall what he had been doing before he collapsed. It seems as though a portion of his memory had been erased. One of the librarians who found him unconscious suggested that he must have come across an ancient book. Scholars at the tower speculated that these kind of books may be protected by powerful enchantments, allowing only those who are truly ready to accept the knowledge within to access them. As the librarian said previously, Argyle did manage to read the book, but the moment he closed it, his memory seemed to vanish. Though their search yielded no concrete information, Alyssa has a solution in mind. It seems like some stories aren't meant for the general public to know. At the temple, Pope Aiden waits anxiously for his daughter, who has expressed a desire to learn how to use divine power. In his hand, he holds a small flower pin, which is a gift he picked out for her. But he debates whether or not to give it to her, worried it might make her feel pressured. He sets the gift down on the table and takes his eyes off of it for a moment, just as Leon walks in. Noticing the flower, Leon recognizes the seeds as the same one Alyssa once taught him to plant. Inspired, he takes it and decides to present it to His Holiness. When Aiden returns to get the gift, he notices the flower seeds from the pin have been removed. Leon excitedly tells him that he planted the seeds in the garden. Once they bloom into a field of beautiful flowers, he plans to give them to him as a gift. However, despite the kid's enthusiasm, Aiden remains stunned, unsure how to respond. This situation is quite funny and cute at the same time. Meanwhile, Alyssa begins looking for Leon, noticing that he hasn't been tending to the flower garden today. Before long, she finds him sitting alone, quietly in tears. As she draws near, his sobs intensify, and he tearfully apologizes for ruining her gift. Confused, she asks what he means, and he explains that it was something her father had bought for her. Previously, Aiden had explained to Leon that the hairpin belonged to Alyssa and that the seed wasn't real. Realizing he's ruined her gift, he broke down in tears. Sadly, there was no time to comfort him as an urgent matter arose, forcing Aiden to leave the child alone in the room for a while. Now, the Pope rushes back anxiously to check on Leon. To his relief, he finds the boy in good spirits, together with Alyssa, who is wearing the hairpin. It appears they managed to fix it together, and she warmly thanks her father for the thoughtful gift. Elsewhere, the Crown Prince Christian throws a fit because of Richard. He's frustrated that everyone keeps talking about him and constantly bringing up his name. It had been a long time since things had quieted down, and people stopped calling him a war hero. But now, after the recent monster attack, that title is being revived, and it only fuels his anger further. Christian tries to calm his nerves, reminding himself that an emperor's role isn't to fight on the battlefield, but to command and give orders. Sure, keep gaslighting yourself, sir. Determined to regain control, he concludes that what he needs is an incident that will put Richard Rubelin in his place. On her way home after her divine power lesson, Alyssa passes by a boutique. Realizing she should give her father a gift in return, she asks the rider to stop at the jewelry store. Upon entering, she immediately asks to see the men's brooch collection. She then tells Anne to browse the clothing section while she shops. Just as Anne is about to look around, she accidentally trips, but a nobleman catches her just in time. He asks if she's all right, but something about the way his hands linger makes Anne uncomfortable, leaving her with an uneasy feeling. Fortunately, Alyssa sees what happens and immediately tells the man to remove his hands from Anne's waist. She sharply calls him out for touching a lady so freely upon their first meeting, and in broad daylight without the slightest sense of shame. He tries to defend himself, explaining that he was only making sure her maid wasn't injured. However, good intentions aside, if the other person feels uncomfortable, then he should know his actions are still inappropriate. Though hesitant at first, Anne can't help but speak up, bluntly saying she doesn't like perverted men, a statement loud enough for everyone in the store to hear. Alyssa quickly informs the staff that the man harassed her maid, prompting them to escort him out. Only then does he realize his status is lower than hers, as evidenced by the firm request to leave. I'm so glad she's not afraid to stand up for what's right. I love women! Shortly after, Anne apologizes for dragging her into the situation. Alyssa gently reassures her that she did nothing wrong and there's no need to apologize. Moreover, it's also revealed, much to her surprise, that the perverted man is the next heir to the Serat family. The next day, Alyssa performs well during her second lesson with her father, maintaining steady control over her strength. Even so, she still wishes her abilities would progress more quickly. Soon after, she gives her father a gift. Though he hesitates at first, as he never expected anything in return, he eventually accepts it as she gently pins it to his chest herself. Come to think of it, Alyssa mentions that she heard he stepped away from the family affairs. He then confirms it, explaining that Cain, a distant relative of Alyssa's, has taken over as his successor. Curious, she wonders what kind of person Cain is. Of course, the Pope doesn't know she's only asking to see if there's still some saving grace in that man. At the temple, Christian's right-hand man spots Alyssa and Aiden walking together. His mood instantly lifts up as he decides to report this sighting to his master as a birthday gift. Meanwhile, Aiden tells Alyssa that Cain has been managing the family affairs well. The Cain her father speaks of seems completely different from the one she encountered at the jewelry store. Perhaps he's good at hiding the filth in him. While walking, they come across Richard tending to the garden alongside Leon, who appears to be teaching him how it's done. Alyssa can't help but smile at the heartwarming sight of her husband and the child bonding. It's clear how deeply she cares for him. Even her father takes notice. When she looks at her husband, her eyes shine with a happiness that seems to light up the world. Momentarily, Richard approaches Alyssa upon noticing them nearby. However, she is still lost in thought, reflecting on how deeply her feelings for him have grown, causing her cheeks to flush. When he points it out, she panics and quickly runs off. Richard stands there, confused, wondering if he did something wrong. Aiden simply advises him to go after her and not let her slip away. Later that night, Alyssa decides to start sleeping alone. For some reason, sharing a bed suddenly feels uncomfortable to her. It's probably just your hormones, girl. He offers to sleep on the couch, but she refuses to let him. After what happened earlier, her heart is racing even more, and her embarrassment causes her to act distant. Still, his gentle persistence wears her down, and in the end, she agrees to let him stay and sleep beside her. Alyssa starts to advance on Richard, quickly moving closer to kiss him. Surprised by this action, Richard feels a little flustered. But seeing that Alyssa is so persistent, he quickly gives in. He returns the gesture, kissing her passionately, warning her that she started it first. As Alyssa and Richard are drunk with each other's kisses, Richard stops and starts to worry about the baby. It might get hurt or startled. However, Alyssa assures Richard that everything is fine. Dr. Setil told her that engaging in certain things is fine as long as they don't overdo it. With those worries out of the way, the two waste no time in continuing their hot and steamy night together. The following morning, Richard wakes up earlier than Alyssa. He starts to remember their night together and how glad he was that he restrained himself so as not to hurt Alyssa. Richard then begins to realize how tormenting it is to hold back. But as soon as he looks at his sleeping wife, he learns that he's willing to endure his needs for Alyssa and their baby's sake. A few minutes later, Alyssa wakes up, beaming at Richard with a smile. She asks if he slept well, to which he smiles and replies that he did. Richard then asks her if she's craving anything or experiencing discomfort because of last night's activity. Still, Alyssa reassures Richard that she's fine, but she stops midway after her stomach growls. She's flustered, but Richard laughs at how cute she is. This couple is so pretty and lovely to look at! Next, as Alyssa enjoys and devours the delicious food in front of them, Richard reminds her to eat slowly while adoring how adorable Alyssa looks. She then asks Richard why he's not eating anything, but Richard tells her he's not hungry and will eat later. Thus, Alyssa teasingly tells Richard that he needs to eat more since his performance last night was only average, and it might be because he lacks strength. Richard's pride is slightly hurt. Little does she know that it was only because he purposely restrained himself last night so as not to overdo it. As soon as Alyssa finishes her food, Richard swiftly carries Alyssa in a bridal style, declaring that he needs to clear up a misunderstanding last night. After hearing this, Alyssa feels more excited about this, thus another round of steamy lovemaking for the couple. Yes, that is right, Richard. You need to redeem yourself and show Alyssa that you're not weak. Later that night, while Richard and Alyssa are sleeping, she starts to dream about being underwater but still being able to breathe. She then hears a voice talking and assures the baby that she would come back together with her father. When Alyssa tries to reach out her hand, she instantly wakes up. Unbeknownst to her, she's crying in her sleep. Luckily, Richard is there for her. He concerningly hugs her and asks how she is. Noticing that Alyssa is still crying, Richard soothes her and assures her that everything is okay. The next day, while Alyssa is about to visit the temple, Richard asks her again if she's fine going alone. He's still concerned since she woke up this morning crying. He might call Dr. Setil to check on her, but Alyssa assures him that she is fine and will visit her father. Seeing that Alyssa is truly alright, Richard lovingly kisses her cheeks. He bids her his goodbyes and well wishes, reminding her to enjoy her time with her father. In return, Alyssa tells Richard to visit the Imperial Palace safely. While in the carriage, Alyssa starts to remember her dream and thinks that those might be memories from when she was in her mother's womb. However, she then feels that she has never acquired or remembered any memories of the original Alyssa before possessing her, which makes no sense. Defeated, she just brushes her thoughts off. When they arrive at the temple, the people start to gossip as soon as they see Alyssa. Alyssa then sees Priest Silica and approaches him, curiously asking if something is going on in the temple since the atmosphere is strange and unusual upon her arrival. Priest Silica explains that rumors about her and the Pope having an inappropriate relationship are circulating. Hearing this, Alyssa is shocked. Who would spread such nonsense? Well, if you ask me, stupid people who do not have anything to do mainly just spread rumors. The Pope then approaches them, but when Silica tried to warn him not to reinforce the rumors, the Pope only asks if he also believed the rumors circulating. This makes Silica backtrack, realizing his mistake for doubting Alyssa and the Pope. He then leaves them shortly. Next, Pope Aiden apologizes to Alyssa for the rumors affecting her. She reassures her father that it's not his fault, but he advises her not to visit the temple until after she gives birth. Richard then barges in and tells them that Alyssa doesn't need to do it since he has a plan, and they only need to trust and follow him. Richard to the rescue! The day of the prince's birthday banquet arrives. During the party, Cain makes his presence, stirring the crowd's attention. They start talking about him being the next head of the Serat family since the current head of the family ascended to the papacy. Some guests, however, gossip about the Serat family's plans to stay close to the Imperial family in the future. Meanwhile, Cain remembers how he fought against the Imperial family. Now that Aiden, the current head of the household, is not in a good relationship with the Imperial family, plus the scandal between Aiden and Alyssa, Cain uses this opportunity to weaken Aiden's power and solidify his position as the successor. Cain even meets with Christian, and he promises that if he gives him his favor, he will remove Aiden from the family. Pleased, the prince agrees and gives Cain an invitation to the banquet. Suddenly, Cain hears the arrival of the Duke and Duchess of Rubalin. Upon seeing who the Duchess is, he is surprised to know that it is Alyssa, the same woman with whom he had a conflict with at the shop. Witnessing this, Cain learns that she is, in fact, no ordinary woman. However, he then remembers the rumors about her alleged infidelity, and thus he plans to use them against her. He plans to embarrass Alyssa at the party. When Cain approaches Alyssa and Richard, he starts to greet them, but then Alyssa openly recounts that he is the man who inappropriately touched her maid. Cain starts to bead with sweat in humiliation since the other guests also heard Alyssa. Thus, he tries to explain that it was all a misunderstanding. However, Alyssa begs to differ since she saw the happening clearly. It was not a misunderstanding. Luckily, the Emperor's arrival steals the crowd's attention, much to Cain's relief. Soon enough, the gift-giving for the prince begins. Mid-ceremony, the Emperor receives an important letter from the Pope stating that, effective today, the head of the Serat family, Aiden Serat, will remove Cain Serat from his position as successor. This shocks the Emperor, making the prince and Cain more curious. Meanwhile, Alyssa approaches the prince and formally introduces herself as the next head of the Serat family, shocking everyone. Cain is outraged, and the room erupts in whispers and gossip. Seeing that others are starting to doubt her, she shows them that she can control water just like a direct descendant of the Serat family. This proves the legitimacy of her being a Serat, and she makes no move to hide the truth from the crowd. All this, of course, was Richard's plan all along. Alyssa is dancing on the blade's edge, and the Emperor can't do anything about it. After witnessing this, Cain furiously marches towards the temple. Upon arriving, the guards stop Cain, which angers him more. How could they have the guts to stop him, an heir to the Serat family? Unfortunately for him, the guards explain that they have been made aware that someone is the new matriarch. The Pope then appears and orders the guards to let him in. Cain approaches the Pope and questioningly reports that something surprising has happened during the party. He was dismissed from being Serat's successor and was replaced by Alyssa. After listening to Cain, the Pope confirms that everything is accurate and tells him that he will not give Cain the position. This makes Cain lash out since he has been raised to be the head of the Serat family all his life. Trying a different approach, he tries to bargain with the Pope that if he is the head of the Serat family, he will help Alyssa as his successor. From behind him, Alyssa appreciates his words, but replies that she will never hand over the position to someone like him. He may have a good reputation and solve the estate problems of the Serat family, but it's all only on the outside. Inside, Cain's true nature is someone who sexually assaults women for fun and pleasure. Hearing this, Cain tries to reason that it is not a big deal since he only plays with a few girls. After all, he argues that he has worked hard to save the Serat's territory while Alyssa was busy wearing pretty dresses and eating sweet cookies. Richard starts to advance to Cain, but is stopped by Alyssa. Cain is so arrogant and perverted, hence it serves him right to be dismissed. Cain can't take it anymore. He's about to raise his hand toward Alyssa, but luckily, Richard easily tosses him away with only a flick of his finger. Richard then instructs the guards to take Cain away. Soon after, Olivia arrives and warmly hugs Alyssa, sharing how happy she is to know that Alyssa is alive. However, she glares at Aiden, angry that he didn't tell her about finding his and Ulia's long-lost child. Meanwhile, the Emperor starts to remember the past. He begins questioning Lamor about what he should do after the real Serat successor has appeared. More importantly, she has the power of the Serat's descendants. He wonders what happened to the prophecy. Lamor then explains to the Emperor that the prophecy is meant to reshape the future. The Emperor, struck by realization, understands that by preventing a foretold future from unfolding, he opens the door to a new one entirely. Lamor agrees, confirming that deviation from prophecy is not a failure, but freedom. After Lamor is dismissed, a thought clings to him. Alyssa is no ordinary girl. He begins to suspect that she might be the reason the king's power has not fully returned. By king, I don't think he means the Emperor. The conclusion becomes clear to him. Alyssa must be eliminated before she becomes a greater obstacle to the king's restoration. The next day, Aiden formally introduces Alyssa to the Serat family. From the moment she arrives, Alyssa notices how guarded the family members seem. Their tension is palpable, and she understands immediately. It's because Cain was forcibly removed from the estate. Frederick approaches her and introduces himself as the Serat family's butler. As Alyssa greets him, she observes the signs of a seasoned servant. Polished, perceptive, precise. Though the rest of the family looks at her with suspicion and quiet judgment, Frederick chooses to assess her based on the values she displays. To Alyssa, he stands out not merely as a servant, but as someone who is truly devoted to the Serat name. While she and Aiden sit in the garden enjoying tea, Aiden casually tells her that the pastries were prepared by Camilla, the head maid. They're all her mother's favorite treats. It so happens Camilla had once cared for Alyssa's mother as well. Her father reassures her that although Camilla may appear strict, she takes genuine joy in serving Alyssa. Not long after, Frederick returns to report an issue. Count Vicenna is refusing to trade with them unless his confiscated lands and subjects are returned. Alyssa's expression sharpens as she remembers that Count Vicenna has long controlled the road to the Marquise's territory. She suggests a compromise. If they cut the toll in half, Vicenna will be more inclined to cooperate, and in exchange, he must assist Serat in removing the bandits plaguing the region. Seeing the confusion still lingering on Aiden and Frederick's faces, Alyssa begins to elaborate. Bandit groups have been forming between the Vicenna and Serat borders. Vicenna came to Serat to protest because Serat is, ironically, doing a better job protecting its land than he is, which makes his people from his territory migrate. Vicenna is also notoriously stingy. He's unlikely to allocate more funds for border defense. Alyssa adds that once the roads are safer and more accessible, trade will naturally increase. With intermediary trade routes, they can secure profits while eliminating the bandits through shared responsibility. Hearing all this, Frederick stares at her, genuinely impressed. Now that was perfect for winning over the butler, Alyssa! Alyssa starts to realize that she is yapping about her plan, when in fact, she knows that her father already has a plan for this problem. Thus, she starts to apologize to her father and Frederick, but surprisingly, her father praises her plan. He then instructs Frederick that they will follow Alyssa's plan. Her father then reminds her that she can lead House Serat like how she led House Rubelin, since this is also Alyssa's home and her people, which Alyssa wholeheartedly accepts. The following month, there are many changes at the Serat mansion. The people gradually begin to warm up to Alyssa after witnessing how skillful she is and how she cares for the Serat family, even their servants. Next, while walking in the hallway, Frederick asks Alyssa what she plans to do today. She announces that she wants to know more about the history of the Serat family. Frederick then informs Alyssa that Camilla will guide her. After they are in the middle of the tour, Camilla then shows Alyssa a portrait of the current head of the Serat family, which is Aiden, and then after, shows a picture of Ulia, Alyssa's mother. Camilla then begins to share how she and Ulia met for the first time, and how Ulia helped her. Camilla also shares how nicely and fairly Ulia treated them and other servants, which is one of the reasons why she's loved. Hearing this, Alyssa smiles and feels so proud of her mother. She tells Camilla what she heard from her father, how her mother used to talk about how much she loves and cares for the Serat family and servants. She then thanks Camilla for caring for her mother, which makes Camilla tear up. She quickly wipes her tears and apologizes to Alyssa, but Alyssa assures her that she's fine. On her way home, Alyssa reminds Frederick to proceed with the Harvest Festival as planned, and that if there are emergencies or urgent business, they can send someone to the Rubelin mansion to inform her. Frederick then reminds Alyssa to care for her body since she's pregnant, thus she must rest. Meanwhile, Cain is spying on Alyssa and is furious because Alyssa is taking everything from him. While busy spying, Laymore appears behind Cain and offers Cain some help. Oh no, not Laymore again! Later that night, the doctor cheerfully informs Alyssa and Richard that everything is excellent with both Alyssa and their baby. Alyssa also shares that she's felt improvements in the past 2 weeks and rarely feels the baby's movements. The doctor explains that the baby has grown and Alyssa's belly has shifted, but she assures them that they'll be able to meet their child in 2 months. Meanwhile, Richard gazes at Alyssa, lost in thought, remembering how painful childbirth can be. He hates the idea of Alyssa enduring such agony, but he tells himself he's willing to let her yank his hair during labor if it helps ease her pain. Ugh, can we all have a husband like Richard? Later, when they're alone, Alyssa looks at Richard and asks what he thinks their child's gender will be. He replies with confidence that the baby will be a girl, which Alyssa instantly rejects. She believes their child will be a boy, and he'll be as handsome as Richard. Upon hearing this, Richard flushes slightly and teasingly asks Alyssa if she really thinks he's that good-looking. Alyssa replies that he already knows it, since most women adore faces like his. But when they lean in to kiss, Richard pulls back quickly, remembering the doctor's advice to take things slowly. A week later, Richard finishes a meeting earlier than expected, so he decides to visit Alyssa at the Serat mansion. Unfortunately for him, Alyssa has been irritated with him for a week now, ever since he pulled away from their kiss. Richard also notices how distant she's been, constantly occupied with Serat Affairs. After hearing Richard's plan, his butler advises that they should bring food when they visit Alyssa so she can enjoy it while she works. Richard agrees and heads straight to the bakery. Upon arriving at the bakery, Richard and the butler notice a man trailing behind them. Because of this, Richard assumes the man has some business with him, so he confronts him and suggests they talk outside instead. The man begins explaining that he knows about that power, and that he knows someone else who's also aware of it. The butler quickly warns Richard that this could be a trap, but Richard moves forward anyway, warning the man not to try anything deceitful. Meanwhile, upon arriving at the Serat estate, Alyssa is greeted by an unfamiliar face. The maid introduces herself as Anna, and politely informs her that she'll be attending to Alyssa today, as Camilla is down with the flu. Curious, Alyssa asks where Frederick is, and Anna responds that he's on vacation after the Harvest Festival. Still, there's something oddly unsettling about this situation. After Anna's explanation, Alyssa heads to her office to get to work. As they walk, Anna offers her breakfast, but Alyssa gently declines, saying she preferred something delightful for lunch instead. Still, both Alyssa and her guards sense that something's not quite right. Though no one says a word, all remain alert. When lunchtime arrives, Anna checks if Alyssa is ready to eat. Once again, Alyssa refuses, saying she still feels bloated. However, she does casually invite Anna to join her for a walk outside. As they wander through the garden paths, one of Alyssa's guards remarks how unusually strong the wind is today. Alyssa nods and tells Anne to return to the carriage with Sir Lorenzo while she continues walking with Anna and the guards. Anne doesn't hesitate and agrees immediately. Moments later, Anna begins to grow restless, irritated that her mission isn't complete. If only Alyssa hadn't been so difficult with her meals. She then decides to take matters into her own hands, stealthily grasping a dagger from her skirt. Suddenly, Alyssa breaks the silence, asking Anna if she knows what the phrase strong wind means in Rublin. This confuses Anna, so Alyssa then explains that it means you may never make it home. By the time Anna grasps the message, it's too late. One of the guards slits her throat. Immediately, Cain bursts onto the scene with a gang of thugs. Instantly, Alyssa's guards step forward, shielding her from harm. Glaring with malice, Cain sneers as Alyssa demands to know what he's done with Frederick and Camilla. Cain just laughs darkly, declaring that their fate is irrelevant because Alyssa will die today. He then lunges at her and her guards without hesitation. Alyssa, though growing faint, summons every ounce of strength to defend herself and protect her unborn child. She silently prays Anne and the knights return, but before help arrives, a blur crashes through the chaos. Richard! With icy composure, Richard releases a chilling aura, and his dark power floods the space. Everyone freezes, even Cain's bravado falters in the face of that overwhelming force. Damn, so cool! The Dark Force's power is wild and terrifyingly elegant! A cloud of dark aura swirls around Richard as he demands answers from Cain. Shaking and pale with terror, Cain finally breaks. He admits that the mastermind behind the attack is none other than Lemur Felice. His lips twitch into a nervous smile, hoping that his cooperation might earn him mercy. But Richard, burning with fury, shows none. Not gonna lie, I don't feel sorry for Cain. Whoops. A soft cry from Alyssa snaps him out of his rage. In an instant, he's at her side as she crumples onto the cold, unforgiving ground. At Rublin Mansion, Dr. Satil tends to Alyssa. Her condition is stable, but she will need constant care over the next few days. A rush of relief floods Richard's chest as he remains beside her, brushing her hair gently and pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. But he can't stay long, and Alyssa knows it too well. Though weak, she urges him to go and do what must be done. With a soft voice, she wishes him well and prays for a safe return. Richard wastes no time. He storms straight to Felice Manor, demanding answers. What does Lemur want from him, from his family? More importantly, what does he know about the darkness growing inside him? Outside, thunder roars and lightning tears the sky apart, but Richard keeps the storm at bay. Inside, Lemur waits unfazed. With a wicked grin, he drops the truth. The dark power is Richard's own, and worse, it was he, Lemur, who delivered it to him. Madness glints in his eyes as he rambles about divine will, a prophecy etched into fate long before Richard's birth. And now, the final step? To remove Alyssa from the picture. Richard's anger boils over. No threat to his wife will ever go unanswered. Yes, King, you tell him. He turns on his heel and storms out, but Lemur isn't done yet. If Richard refuses to believe him, then he should visit the Tower of Truth. That halts Richard for just a beat, curiosity piqued. But before he can speak, a knight bursts through the doors, breathless. Alyssa is in agonizing pain. Without hesitation, Richard bolts from the manor, heart hammering, desperation leading his every step. But even as he flees, Laymore's eerie voice echoes behind him. "Stay away from Alyssa," he chimes. Alone, with a sinister smile curling his lips, Laymore whispers to himself. How cruel would it be if Alyssa died by her husband's own hands? Time has passed since then, and winter has come upon the Empire of Orencia. Though Alyssa's health has spiraled badly ever since she experienced abrupt and excruciating labor pains, thanks to Dr. Satil, her condition is improving. Yet despite all that, Richard can't help but feel guilty, something that doesn't go unnoticed by Alyssa. With a calm and steady voice, she reassures him that none of the things they went through is his fault. Trying to lift his spirits, she redirects his attention to all the baby gifts they've received so far, from baby clothes to rattles and different toys. Their loved ones were sure to shower them with everything their baby needed. However, looking at all the gifts, Richard can't help but notice that there's not a single gift for Alyssa alone. Rummaging through his pockets, he gently hands Alyssa a key, much to her confusion. Apparently, Richard has recently purchased a plot of land in Rudea and has commissioned a villa to be built there for their family, a gift to Alyssa, his most loved. Oh, to have a man who gives you a villa! Where can I find one in real life? Alyssa is beside herself, speechless at such a grand gift. Tears prick the corners of her eyes, grateful for such a loving husband. Someday, they'd get to enjoy Rudea's countryside with their baby. Later that night, Alyssa writhers in intolerable pain as her contractions begin once more. Richard immediately rings Anne, bidding her to summon Dr. Satil in the dead of night. Richard's mind is in shambles, pacing around non-stop as Dr. Satil tends to Alyssa in their chambers. All the color drains from his face as he waits in worry. Even Thompson is concerned, and he helps Richard pull himself together. Just then, Dr. Satil emerges from the room, announcing that both mother and child are doing well. Without delay, she invites Richard inside the room. Upon entering their chambers, the most beautiful and heartwarming sight welcomes him. Alyssa gently cradling their baby boy, Hannis. No words can even explain the whirlwind of emotions Richard is feeling right now, and he lets his tears of joy and relief stream down. As he holds little Hannis in his arms, Alyssa explains that his name means blessing in the ancient language, a fitting name for their little bundle of joy. And a joy he truly is, as Richard exclaims through silent tears that he'd devote his life protecting Hannis. Oh my gosh, look at how he gazes at him. He loves him so much. A month later, Richard's family is still wrapped in joy and laughter. But deep down, he knows that to protect that happiness, he must uncover more about the dark power that stirs within him. In the study, Argyle lays out what he's found about Laymore Felice. It turns out Laymore once shared a close bond with the former emperor, which sparks Richard's suspicion. Could Laymore be out for revenge against the current emperor, Rome Carat? Laymore, as it happens, is the younger brother of the former Empress and was cherished like family by the previous emperor. 20 years ago, Laymore and Aiden were dispatched to the canyon to handle a crisis. But while they were away, the emperor was poisoned. Oddly enough, when Laymore returned, he immediately pledged loyalty to Rome Carat, a move that leaves Richard puzzled. Did Laymore abandon any thoughts of vengeance? Whatever he's plotting, Richard wants no part of it. The next day, Emperor Rome invites the crown prince Christian for tea with Laymore. He wastes no time and urges Christian to produce an heir in the coming year. Christian stiffens at the demand, but surprisingly, Laymore steps in to defend him. Throughout the meeting, Laymore's presence exudes quiet menace. Yet when the conversation shifts to Alyssa and her management of House Serat, his composure cracks. He sharply insists Alyssa must not and cannot inherit the title of Marchioness. In the weeks leading up to the new year, the temple throws itself into distributing aid and gifts to the people. Even Pope Aiden and little Leon are swept up in the hustle. One chilly evening, as Leon arranges the gifts he's prepared for his loved ones, a knock sounds at the door. It's Alyssa and Richard. Leon lights up with joy, but pauses in confusion. Why is the Duke carrying what looks like an enormous loaf of bread? Richard bursts into laughter and crouches down, revealing what he's actually holding. Leon peers in and gasps. It's a baby! Richard beams as he introduces their son, Hannis, and Leon is instantly enchanted by the tiny bundle. Aww, big brother Leon in the house! Just then, Aiden rushes in, breathless and apologizing for not greeting them sooner. Like with Leon, Alyssa and Richard present the newest member of the family, Aiden's own grandson, Hannis. But as sweet as the reunion is, there's no ignoring the storm on the horizon. The Emperor is prepared to do everything in his power to prevent Alyssa from becoming the rightful heir of House Serat. A New Year's ball takes place at the Imperial Palace. Just as the Emperor finishes his speech, Christian scoffs under his breath at the sight of Richard and Alyssa. Oddly enough, even his usual band of lackeys seem captivated by Alyssa's beauty. Stealing a glance for himself, Christian mutters that indeed, Alyssa is stunning. But then a twisted thought slithers into his mind. He wants Alyssa to bear him a child. Excuse me? That is a married woman, sir! Out on the balcony, Alyssa steps away for a breath of fresh air, only to find herself cornered by Christian. Claiming he needs to speak with her about something important, he tries to coax her into moving somewhere more private. Alyssa refuses, her voice firm and unyielding. But then Christian raises a hand to seize her, so she doesn't hesitate to summon her power, pinning him in a chokehold. Christian's face contorts with rage. How dare she strike the Crown Prince? But before he can lash out, Richard appears, stepping between them like a wall of calm fury. Alyssa stands beside her husband, his presence a steady fire behind her. With a composed voice, she tells the prince that if he wishes to speak with her, he should pay a formal visit to the Rubelan mansion. And with that, they leave an infuriated Christian fuming on the balcony alone. The very next day, Grayson, the butler, announces that Crown Prince Christian has arrived for a visit. Alyssa, cradling baby Hannis in her arms, greets him with cold civility. She knows exactly why he's come. Whatever business he meant to bring up last night is about to rear its head now. Christian flashes a smug smile, impressed by how quickly she catches on. Wasting no time, he launches into his brilliant proposal. He wants Alyssa to bear an imperial child for him. Alyssa stares at him, wide-eyed and stunned. Has he completely lost it? Girl, same reaction. I too am wondering if the man is still sane. Christian explains further, convinced that this arrangement would solidify ties between the imperial family and House Rubelan. He sits tall, proud of his audacity, while Alyssa just looks at him like he's ridiculous. As Hannis begins to cry, Alyssa excuses herself, gently rocking her baby. Without even glancing back, she coldly tells the prince she'll pretend she didn't just hear such utter nonsense. Christian rises, brushing off the rejection with a sneer. Then, with a venomous smile, he reveals the real reason the Emperor will never allow Alyssa to become the head of House Serat, because they deem her mother, Ulia, a traitor. Christian's smug expression lingers as he continues rambling. If Alyssa would simply bear him an imperial child, perhaps the Emperor would be lenient on her. Just let me punch him one time. Just one time. It's a shameless proposition, one that sends a chill down Alyssa's spine. But before she can respond, the door crashes open and Richard steps in, a storm brewing as he stares daggers at Christian. He's heard everything, and a dark energy simmers around him as he strides forward, fists clenched. In one swift motion, he lands a brutal punch on Christian's face. Yes! Finally got what he deserved! It's as if you read my mind, Richard! The Crown Prince recoils, stunned and furious. How dare a duke strike royalty? Tension rises like a blade between them. But before another blow can land, Hannis' soft coup cuts through the chaos, snapping Richard out of his bloodlust. Without another glance at Christian, Richard returns to Alyssa and their son. Calm but sharp, he challenges Christian to go ahead and report the incident to the Emperor. And while he's at it, why not include the part about hitting on a married woman? They leave him there, seething. Yet even as they retreat to their safety of the room, Alyssa can't shake the lingering fear of how close Richard had become to being consumed by his dark power again. The following day, Alyssa meets her father, determined to continue her divine training. She yearns to purify Richard's darkness, to reach him before it takes hold again. But Pope Aiden gently reminds her that such purification is no easy task. It's too soon, too dangerous. He compares their power to water being poured into a drain. Everything works fine until the flow becomes too strong, the pressure builds and the drain explodes. A fate met by Lady Ariane, the first head of House Serat. However, with proper training, the body can grow to contain greater power. Still, Aiden warns Alyssa not to throw herself into reckless danger just to fast-track her growth. Help, she's so funny. She was really willing to purposely orchestrate near-death experiences just to enhance her power. Just then, Richard arrives and Alyssa races into his arms. He carries a letter addressed to Aiden from the Emperor. The contents are as expected. The Emperor refuses to recognize Alyssa as the rightful heir of House Serat, but instead of despair, a spark ignites within Alyssa. Ever so determined, she asks her father to tell the Emperor that she wants to meet him privately, confident that he'll change his mind after their meeting. The following day, Alyssa arrives at the Imperial Palace cloaked in calm resolve. The Emperor, intrigued by her unexpected request for a private audience, dismisses his staff without question. But when he notices a woman lingering quietly behind Alyssa, he raises a brow in confusion. Unbothered, Alyssa informs him that the woman stays. In fact, she's the very reason for the meeting. Ooh, now this is getting interesting. With composed grace, Alyssa steers the conversation. She asks if the Emperor remembers the woman standing behind her. As she suspected, he doesn't, because to him, she was just someone he could discard so easily. Alyssa presses forward, recounting the events of a long-buried past, the weight of that fateful day laid bare. A few days later, the Emperor calls for a sudden assembly of the Empire's nobility. The assembly is abrupt and sudden, leaving Christian to assume it's about Alyssa's disqualification, another step to snuff out her claim to House Serat. From across the Grand Hall, he catches sight of Alyssa and Richard. Bold, he sneers, thinking they've come uninvited. But his amusement quickly wanes when Richard shoots him a piercing gaze. It's a look that rattles his core, but still, he strides over to confront them. Christian mocks their presence, challenging Alyssa's audacity to act like the rightful heir. But Alyssa, poised and unshaken, cuts through his arrogance with sharp finality. National decrees may be carved in stone, but lies, no matter how old, can still be undone. Before he can muster a reply, the Emperor arrives, bringing an end to the whispers. Christian falls in line, eager to hear his father's proclamation, but the words that follow strike him like thunder. The Emperor announces that Ulia Serat's name is to be cleared. The woman once condemned as a traitor for poisoning the former Emperor is now absolved of all crimes. Even in death, she regains her title as Marchioness of House Serat. Ha! Take that, Christian! So much for branding her mother as a traitor! The room breaks into startled murmurs while Christian stands frozen. What on earth happened behind those closed doors of their meeting? The implications are immediate. Alyssa is no longer the daughter of a traitor. With her mother's name restored, her path to ascend as House Serat's head and heir now becomes unchallenged. As the Emperor turns to leave, Alyssa watches his retreating figure, her thoughts spinning back to the quiet storm of truth that changed everything. Alyssa recalls her private meeting with the Emperor. With confidence, she states that the proposition she's about to make would benefit him greatly, fueling the Emperor's curiosity. With a firm wave of her hand, she gestures to the woman behind her, introducing her as a witness to the former Emperor's poisoning 20 years prior. To be exact, she witnessed his own scheming to command the staff to poison the former Emperor, his own brother. The Emperor feigns ignorance, claiming to feel slighted by such an audacious remark. Enraged, he demands Alyssa to produce evidence for her claims because if memory serves him right, he never ordered to poison the former Emperor. Someone give this guy an Oscar! His acting is top tier! Alyssa explains that the current commander of the Imperial Guard, a devoted subordinate of the current Emperor, once had a twin brother. That twin brother was the one who relayed his orders to the maid, urging them to poison the former Emperor. And it just so happens the woman and one of her friends were subjected to that order. The Emperor may have tried to erase everyone involved, but one man ensured a witness survived, hoping to use her as leverage. That man was none other than Lemur Felice. A heavy silence settles between them. Alyssa doesn't press. She doesn't need to. The Emperor is no fool. He realizes she isn't here to start a rebellion. She's offering him a way out. Rather than expose him, she gives him a chance to make it right. He knows all too well what Alyssa wants, a restoration of Ulia Serat's title and honor. Spot on, Alyssa thinks, and for that, she suggests he make the announcement publicly and soon too. He gives in to Alyssa's request, ultimately inviting her to a sudden assembly set the following day. There, he'll make the proclamation to restore her mother's honor. I guess there's some wit left in you after all. As Alyssa and the woman leave, Alyssa reflects on what a good decision it was to spare Viscount Rojas's life. If it weren't for him, they would never have uncovered the truth. Inside the carriage, Alyssa thanks Lena with all her heart. She offers her words of comfort for the 20 years of horror she had to endure, making Lena break down in tears. With a reassuring hand, she encourages Lena to look forward to a new and happy life. Justice will soon be served. A formal ceremony marks Alyssa's succession as the official head of House Serat. The Grand Hall is filled with applause, well wishes, and lavish gifts. Yet amid the celebration, whispers flutter like dust in the corners. Some nobles murmur, questioning the consolidation of power. With Alyssa now the heir of Serat and Richard the Duke of Rubelin, it's as if House Rubelin might be pulling Serat's strings. Their gossip comes to an abrupt halt when Richard approaches, his expression unreadable but his presence commanding. He coolly reminds them of their place, calling out their audacity. Never once, he says, has he seen his wife as a mere extension of himself. Alyssa is a capable leader, one who governs with her own strength, not his. Ashamed, the nobles scramble for excuses, claiming the need to attend to urgent business as they retreat. Richard, in turn, returns to the crowd, eyes locking onto Alyssa with warmth and admiration as he joins the applause, his pride for her undeniable. But that evening, celebration gives way to a more personal dilemma. Alyssa informs him of her intent to stay at the Serat Manor for a time. Richard freezes, clearly distraught. He isn't fond of the idea of being apart from her, and he voices his concerns to Alyssa without fail. Alyssa, however, has an answer for everything. She assures him that the Rubalin mansion will run just fine without her for a few days. After all, she quips, they're usually just asleep next to each other at night. Richard scoffs at the idea, then offers an intimate look of determination. If that's the case, then maybe they should start doing something other than sleeping. Perhaps then she'll think twice about leaving. Catching his intentions in an instant, Alyssa makes no move to reject his advances, pulling him closer to her. If you know, you know. Calm it down, you two. Hannis might gain a sibling sooner than everyone expected. The next morning, the family prepares for a quiet outing outside the capital. As Richard lifts Hannis into the carriage, a sharp pain shoots through his shoulder. The dark force flares within him, threatening to resurface. He clenches his jaw and suppresses it quickly, just before Alyssa can notice. They arrive at Ulia's grave, where Alyssa kneels and begins speaking softly, recounting all that has happened recently. But as she turns to Richard, her blood runs cold. His body trembles and the dark force within him rises once again. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think? As always, don't forget to like the video and comment for the next part so we know you want more. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for updates. See you in the next one!